Razor-sharp blades sliced into his bare feet with every agonizing step. Yet, he refused to stop, sprinting across the steel without a scream. Even as his nerves were severed and feeling vanished, the flesh knit itself back together in mere seconds. This miracle began the day Gwang-ik turned 18. He had awakened to a terrifying truth. He was a forbidden hybrid, possessing the undying blood of an immortal and the ferocious power of a shapeshifter. The morning after his 18th birthday, he woke to find his reflection changed forever. His muscles had hardened into steel, and raw power surged through his veins. Thus began his hellish training to become the ultimate living weapon. He threw himself off cliffs, sprinted over knives, and pushed his body past the breaking point, mastering every weapon known to man. All of this torture was for one purpose: to control the chaotic power of a perfect hybrid. But before this, the world had been a fragile paradise. Civilians walked the streets in peace, unaware that beneath their feet, a sinister energy was gathering, hungry for blood. A terrifying void opened beneath an unsuspecting man, swallowing him whole. The sky cracked open, and the black holes of the apocalypse appeared. While the first victim was dragged into the abyss, panic erupted. The screaming crowd scrambled for survival. From those dark portals, nightmares emerged. Twisted, demonic creatures poured out, intent on extinguishing humanity. News helicopters circled the carnage as the rifts expanded. The death toll skyrocketed with every passing second. Amidst the rubble, a child lay helpless. But standing over him was a figure who didn't tremble. Someone who belonged to this new, violent era. This warrior stared down the monsters with cold eyes. This is the story of a world rewritten by power and blood. The portals tore open the sky, the ocean, and the earth. Unseen beasts slaughtered mankind without mercy. That was the moment the supernaturals stepped out of the shadows. Humans who wielded the very powers of the monsters. First, the immortals. Beings who could regrow limbs, shrug off death, and fight for eternity. Then, the shapeshifters. Warriors who unleashed the beast within to slaughter their enemies. And finally, the mages, masters of arcane destruction. Because of these awakened heroes, the apocalypse was halted. History would remember that time as the Year of Terror. Peace returned, but fear lingered. The world now watched these supernaturals with suspicion, terrified of their godlike strength. To keep the peace, the government stepped in, creating strict laws to control and register these dangerous individuals. Mega-corporations joined the fray, forming massive guilds and organizations to harness the power of psychics and fighters. Mages chose to vanish into the shadows for safety. Now, 20 years later, they hide in plain sight. We cut to a young man distracted by his phone in a grocery aisle. Beside him, his father clears his throat, dropping a bombshell with zero warning. "Son, don't freak out. You are an immortal." The words hung in the air between the cereal boxes. Gwang-ik froze, letting the absurdity sink in. Still holding the shopping basket? His father claimed the bloodline was inherited. Gwang-ik just wanted to know why they were discussing genetic secrets next to the produce section. His father lowered his voice, deadly serious. "This is top secret. Your mother must never know." Immortals were famous for their eternal youth. His dad admitted Gwang-ik might be a diluted mix, but the blood was undeniable. "Your powers will awaken on your 20th birthday, he whispered. At exactly 11 p.m. tonight, Gwang-ik stood there, processing the chaos, while his father casually pivoted back to his grocery list. "Right, we need garlic." The old man, who looked suspiciously young, mumbled about mom wanting the fresh kind because the skins peeled easier. Again, the warning came. "Do not tell your mother. She has no idea she married a monster. One slip-up could destroy their family." Since they were already at the register, Gwang-ik suggested they take this life-altering chat outside. Walking home, Gwang-ik hauled the heavy bags effortlessly. His father watched him, eyes gleaming with pride. He marveled at the boy's strength. Usually, immortals weren't physically dominant, yet his son was a powerhouse. "Must be all that gym time," the dad mused. Gwang-ik forced an awkward smile, knowing he barely touched a weight these days. That strength didn't come from the gym. It came from a second secret, one that Gwang-ik was hiding from his own father. They arrived home to a warm welcome. The lady of the house greeted them with a smile that hid just as many lies. Gwang-ik had known his second secret for years, long before today's revelation. He watched his parents, a couple clearly still deep in love. His mother was overjoyed about the garlic. Watching them flirt over vegetables was agonizing for Gwang-ik. It was insane. This entire family was built on a foundation of explosive secrets, a ticking time bomb waiting to go off, because his mother was a shapeshifter. 2 years ago, she had pulled Gwang-ik aside and whispered, "You have the beast's blood, just like me." Shapeshifter powers awaken at 18. That night, 2 years ago, his body had already transformed. She had grabbed his shoulders, eyes wide with fear. "Never tell your father, he can never know." Now, sitting between an immortal father and a shapeshifter mother. They asked him what he wanted for his birthday. The irony was suffocating. Being a rational soul, he claimed he was already grateful to possess such a cool family. His parents warned him he would regret those words. However, the matriarch secretly admired that bold attitude. The boy is silver-tongued, exactly like her husband. Meanwhile, the old man remarked, "Our boy inherited his mother's fiery character. There is a palpable depth of affection between them. They do not seem like two master liars, but for the protagonist, this charade is acceptable, an immortal and a shapeshifter. A truly fascinating, if dangerous, combination. His birthday is unfolding traditionally, and our boy cannot fathom why his parents maintain these intricate lies." Later, within the sanctuary of his room, the boy tried to calm his nerves. Glancing at the clock, he realized it would soon be 11 p.m. His mind drifted back to his earlier conversation with the old man. Burning with curiosity, the boy had demanded to know if becoming an immortal was painful. The old man admitted his body scorched as if on fire when the change took hold. Then, an absolute zero chill swept through him. That was the moment his senses sharpened to a divine level. Even though it was bizarre, he felt no agony. This memory forced the protagonist to recall his own awakening as a shapeshifter. He had nearly died, all while his mother claimed to be nothing but a normal human. Our boy asked if he was truly destined to inherit immortality. His dad guaranteed it, declaring, "Those genes are dominant. They cannot be denied." Just as he was about to reveal a specific secret about his own nature, the old man swallowed his words, believing the boy would remain unaffected by the truth. This silence obviously left our protagonist burning with unanswered questions. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, our boy wonders if he possesses the capacity to inherit both legendary bloodlines. After all, he is already a shapeshifter, and he has no clue how to explain it to his dad if the immortal traits fail to manifest. Not wanting to spiral, the boy decided to surrender to sleep, but that night was destined to be complicated. Our boy writhes in agony, haunted by the memory of the terrible year. Back in an era before black holes scarred the earth, nobody knew of immortals or shapeshifters. Life was blissfully ordinary. Meanwhile, in the present, our boy is enduring a near-death experience. The pain is blinding. Suddenly, his eyes began to shine with an abnormal, piercing light. We are transported 2 years into the past, to the day our boy turned 18. Looking in the mirror, he realized his physique had become visibly godlike. All that sheer muscle mass appeared simply from awakening as a shapeshifter. He was startled by his mother, who seemed to have anticipated this evolution. The matriarch asked if he was enjoying the surge of power. Our boy was obviously flushed with embarrassment, but she had only come to verify that his vital signs were stable. The protagonist confessed he felt an overflowing power, his senses sharpened to a razor's edge. He just could not understand why the matriarch had kept him in the dark. When the transformation took hold, it felt as though his scalp was being torn apart. He had vomited copious amounts of blood, feeling as if every single muscle fiber was tearing into thousands of microscopic pieces. The matriarch stated that a warning would have changed nothing. Fate is absolute. He would have endured the torture regardless. Deeply concerned, our boy needed to know if this brutal awakening would recur, but she guaranteed the chaos would settle into normalcy. This reassurance left our protagonist vastly relieved. He never wanted to experience that hell again. Back in the present, the poor guy is fighting for his very existence. If there is one thing absent from his life right now, it is comfort. The next day, the boy tugged at his facial skin, testing its elasticity. Even though he has ascended to become an immortal, the pain lingers. Strangely, his physical appearance remains unchanged. The only noticeable evolution is in his eyes. He can pierce through the darkness with clarity now. His senses have evolved to a terrifying degree. His hearing is particularly acute. Even the slightest noise assaults his nervous system. He is struggling to dampen the sensory overload, trying to isolate his mind from the cacophony to find a sliver of peace. Finally, his equilibrium returned. Sighing in relief, our protagonist realized the truth: he really had transformed into an immortal. But the real anxiety stems from wondering if he can keep these dual abilities concealed. From the hallway, voices call for Gwang-ik to come down for breakfast. God, what a horrible name. When he stepped out of the bathroom, our boy was genuinely awestruck. The breakfast spread looks like a feast from a 5-star hotel. It must be his lucky day. Fate is smiling upon him this morning. Only then did the realization hit him. Everyone in this house consumes food like a black hole. Our boy knew shapeshifters required massive caloric intake, but his father, the immortal, also eats like a beast. Perhaps all supernatural entities share this voracious hunger. Actually, the old man noticed the portions were lighter than usual. The matriarch assured him she is preparing more rice, and it will be ready momentarily. Our boy thinks it is absurd that these two apex predators never suspected each other's true nature. Just then, the old man remembered a crucial topic he needed to address. He needs to prepare for the civil service examination. This information drops like a sudden bomb. The old man insisted a golden opportunity had just appeared, but the matriarch visibly bristled at the suggestion. The boy is 20 years old. He should attend university. Higher education is vital, but the father argues it is superior to become a functional, powerful member of society immediately. The matriarch agrees in principle, but she refuses to watch her son rot away studying for a bureaucratic exam. The old man counters that our protagonist is a genius who won't need to study hard at all. This is the first time the boy has witnessed such a heated clash between them. It seems most immortals serve the government. Perhaps this is exactly why his father desires such an outcome. But complicating matters, the matriarch surely harbors schemes of her own. The scene shifts back to the past. Our protagonist effortlessly clears 15 pull-ups, a feat that demands respect. Before his awakening, he struggled to complete even 2. As the matriarch explained, shapeshifters possess strength 3 times that of an ordinary human. It all makes sense now. The source of his mother's monstrous power is clear. Furthermore, her relentless training over the years has honed that strength to perfection. But raw power isn't their only gift. There is another domain where they reign supreme. Shapeshifters are masters of instinct, and soon, a primal sixth sense will guide the boy's every move. Yet, for now, this revelation only adds to the chaos in his mind. He feels nothing yet. But the matriarch warns him sternly. In civilized society, wild instincts are a liability. He must train to chain the beast within. This is precisely why she insists on college and a respectable, traditional career. His grandfather holds deep connections with corporations that secretly employ their kind. To access that world, academic excellence is the key. Once inside, he will receive the true tutelage befitting a shapeshifter. While his parents map out his destiny, they realize the final choice belongs to him. This freedom, however, places our protagonist at a suffocating crossroads. Unknown to them, he harbors a third option, a path he has kept locked away in silence. He finally speaks his truth. He wants to join the Navy and become a Marine. The declaration sucks the air from the room, leaving his parents in stunned silence. Fury ignites in the matriarch's eyes. She knows his potential as a shapeshifter and refuses to see him wasted as mere cannon fodder. She insists he hasn't thought this through, claiming his vision is clouded. He counters that at 20 years old, he is the master of his own fate. Yet, his words only fan the flames of her rage, her mood turning darker by the second. Surprisingly, the old man finds merit in the idea. To him, the discipline of the Navy is not a path to be scorned. The protagonist isn't chasing glory or a sharp uniform. In this twisted, bizarre world, the urge to protect one's homeland is a primal calling. The old man sees a strategic advantage. They won't throw a rookie into the grinder of the first armed conflict. He will endure basic training and likely rot away at some remote, inconsequential base. Just as victory seems within reach, his mother shuts it down. That is, until the old man plays a different card, the civil service exam. A compromise is struck. Pass the exam first, then join the military. In truth, this credential could fast-track his ascent through the ranks. Weighing his options, the protagonist accepts the challenge. The old man warns him, however, that mere passing is not enough. He must excel. Fully invested in this plan, the old man reveals he has already arranged a private tutor. The deal is sealed, but the tension remains. The matriarch's displeasure radiates off her like a cold aura. That very day, he embarks on a journey to prepare. His destination? The isolated dwelling of a reclusive farmer. He never imagined he'd be hitting the books for a civil exam, not with his heart set on the battlefield as a Marine. On the bus ride, he doom scrolls through his phone to kill time. The news feed is a bleak repetition of the usual chaos. Global conflicts are spiking, a trend that casts a heavy shadow over his spirits. Perhaps military life isn't as glorious as he dreamed. The chaos stems from the emergence of white holes, phenomena that followed the catastrophic black holes. While black holes spew monsters, white holes are gateways. They open paths to invader dimensions, realms teeming with alien minerals, flora, and fauna. It is a treasure trove waiting to be plundered, and humanity's hunger for new resources is insatiable. In this resource war, shapeshifters are the ultimate weapons, the tip of the spear forging a path through the unknown. This explains the matriarch's terror. She refuses to sacrifice her son to the war machine. But the protagonist desires more than just a rank. He yearns to be a pivotal piece in a game much larger than himself. Meanwhile, the mysterious farmer receives a call from the old man. He warns that nepotism won't save the boy. He intends to break him down to build him up. He vows to whip the boy into shape, a promise that sounds more like a threat. Our poor protagonist has no idea what's coming. Oblivious to the hell awaiting him, the boy arrives. Master and student lock eyes, sizing each other up. Skepticism written on his face. The farmer demands his identity. The protagonist calmly states he is the old man's son, but the farmer isn't asking for a name. He's analyzing the boy's physique, too muscular, too solid to be a typical immortal. When the boy reveals he is a hybrid, the farmer's frown deepens. Something doesn't add up. Immortal genes are overwhelmingly dominant, and he knows the lineage of the boy's father all too well. Human genes shouldn't be able to alter the physiology this much. The protagonist suggests his mother's bloodline might be the wild card. The farmer finds the story suspicious, but shrugs it off for now. He gestures for the boy to follow. The private mentorship begins now. Recalling his purpose, the protagonist steps forward. Obeying the old man's command, he enters this unforgiving land to forge his destiny. That rugged farmer in the straw hat, looking like a survivalist straight out of the wild, is actually our boy's master. Surely, a being this enigmatic must be an immortal as well. Curious about his surroundings, the protagonist scanned the area and asked if there was a sacred temple nearby. The farmer stared at him blankly, thinking that was the most ridiculous question he had heard all day. But anxiety starts to creep in. They venture deeper and deeper into the savage mountains until, finally, they reach their destination. Our protagonist's heart sinks at the sight. There is no grand dojo. It is a desolate clearing, with nothing but a cold fire pit and a pathetic, crumbling shack. Rage bubbles up inside him. What the hell is he supposed to learn in a dump like this? He came here to study the arts, not live like a savage. The farmer cuts through his thoughts, asking if the boy has truly awakened his potential, and if he has tested the limits of his new abilities. The protagonist nods. He tested it by slicing his own flesh, and just as expected, the wound vanished in seconds. Seeing the basics are covered, the farmer asks if he knows the secret behind an immortal's regeneration. The truth? Not even the farmer holds that specific answer, because a true master has no need for basic healing theories. The fundamental law is resilience. The greater an immortal's physical resistance, the more explosive their healing powers become. The second pillar is the nervous system. The sharper their senses, the more excruciating the pain they must endure. If he can master that agony, he can pinpoint his injuries with divine precision. This training exists for one reason: to forge his resistance and grant him absolute dominion over his senses. After laying down the law, the farmer glares at him, asking if the boy still has doubts clouding his mind. The protagonist points a trembling finger. There is one thing he cannot grasp. Does he really need to walk across that road paved with razor-sharp knives? The farmer insists it is the only way to master his own body. But to our boy, walking into a meat grinder makes zero sense. Realizing his student talks too much, the farmer snaps. Why is the boy even taking the entrance exam? This torture is the test. Only then does the farmer drop the bomb. Is the boy not planning to join the elite immortal task force? Our protagonist blinks, completely blindsided. He is utterly oblivious to this high-stakes information. Apparently, that old man held back the dark truth. The farmer explains this is like the military. If the boy lacks the gut, he can walk away from the training right now. But to achieve his true ambition, our protagonist realizes there is no escape. He must conquer this hellish trial. Since blood might ruin his good clothes, the farmer tosses him a pair of hideous shorts. Now, our protagonist stands barefoot before the blade pit. This exam is nothing like the written tests he expected. With a cruel grin, the farmer commands the boy to start running. I don't have all day. The protagonist lets out a deep, resigned sigh. There is no turning back. Filling his lungs with determination, he steps onto the path of steel. Immediately, the blades slice into his soles, piercing tender flesh. As our boy screams in agony, the farmer barks at him not to stop. If enemies were chasing him, the pain would be far worse than a few cuts. The knives begin to slice all the way down to the bone. By the end of the day, his legs are trembling, heavy as lead. The training is brutal. Yet, the farmer notices something. The boy instinctively dodges the sharpest edges, a sign of god-tier reflexes. But there is something even more terrifying. The boy's healing ability is not just good, it is monstrous. For perfection, however, he needs to suffer more. He must stop dodging the blades. He is ordered to stomp with enough force to shatter his own legs. Stop your whining and get back to running, now. While our boy writhes in torment, the farmer realizes there is something fundamentally different about this kid. After the lap, the farmer nods grimly. An immortal won't die so easily. It is time for another round. Our protagonist begs to know when this nightmare ends. The farmer replies coldly. They need to push the threshold. He must overcome the shock and forge an iron tolerance to pain. Those knives are not just for cutting flesh. They are to prepare his mind for moments of absolute panic. The farmer wonders why the boy hasn't collapsed from shock yet. But only the protagonist knows the truth. He is also a shifter. A shifter would never go into shock from mere physical trauma. Desperate, our protagonist asks if there is a faster way to pass. The farmer challenges him. How fast can you sprint 50 meters? The boy replies, 6 seconds. That is exactly the length of the knife track. If the boy can blitz the route in that time, he passes instantly. Hearing this, a fire lights up in our protagonist's eyes. He is determined to end this hell now. But here's the kicker. He lied about the 6 seconds. That is his jogging speed. It is going to hurt like hell. But our boy prepares to lock down his senses. Crushing that root in 6 seconds? That will be child's play. The protagonist charges toward the blade field without a shred of fear, leaving the poor farmer stunned by his sudden ferocity. Our boy glides over the steel. He reaches the finish line in exactly 6 seconds. He pants heavily, acting exhausted, but the farmer cannot comprehend what he just saw. He finally recognizes that the protagonist is a breed apart from any student he has ever taught. So, with a straight face, the farmer asks him to do it again to verify the result. Oops, I forgot to start the stopwatch. The training montage shifted gears. The instructor tossed a strange artifact to our hero, a necklace that radiated bad vibes. Necklace was a lie, it was a beast's collar. The farmer's order was absolute. Wear it or fail the next trial. This stage was not about muscle, but spirit. The protagonist had to master the art of breath control. As he clasped it on, the weight of the iron segments dragged him down. Now he understood the burden. With a single press of a button, that collar would constrict like a python. And the rule was simple, never take it off. He had just survived a gauntlet of knives. He wouldn't fold now. As for his name, it's a tragedy. Let's call him Gustavo, for this legend. Gustavo pleaded for underwater training instead, but the farmer scoffed at the weakness. That is not enough. This device mimics lethal strangulation. It was total warfare on the body. To lose one's senses here meant death. During the Great War against the supernaturals, humanity evolved. In the old days, recruits were hanged from trees to forge this resilience. Modern rookies had it easy, but to Gustavo, this was madness. This wasn't training, it was pure torture. Yet his will was iron. He demanded the passing condition. The farmer's answer was grim: push until you black out. The goal was simple but impossible. Force himself to stay conscious for 5 agonizing minutes. The farmer issued a final warning. Touch the device or my controller, and I will pierce your chest before you blink. The warrior steeled himself. The farmer's finger hovered over the button. The suffering was about to escalate. Instant agony. Gustavo's claws tore at the earth. The steel band crushed his windpipe with merciless force. He couldn't even stand. Vision swimming in pain, instinct took over, and he tried to pry the collar loose. The farmer ruthlessly swatted his hand away. He would not allow an escape from this hell. Seeing the boy struggle, the master mused. Was he too lenient? If the pain is too immense, the mind breaks instantly. Asterisk. How long has it been? Asterisk. Gustavo's mind screamed. Surely, 5 minutes had passed in this suffocating eternity. His reality warped. Pressure built behind his eyes like a grenade, ready to detonate. His internal breaker about to trip. Finally, he broke. He signaled surrender, and the machine automatically disengaged. Life rushed back into his lungs, his eyes shining with renewed mana. But the farmer stood there, completely baffled. The old man hadn't touched the button. He assumed the device malfunctioned or the battery died at that exact second. The collar clattered to the dirt. I saw the gates of the afterlife, Gustavo gasped, clutching his throat. Impossible, the farmer countered, eyes narrowing. You did not faint. You are still here. Gustavo prayed to the gods he wouldn't have to repeat it. He was certain he had beaten the 5-minute clock. The stopwatch revealed the shocking truth. Not 5 minutes. Gustavo had endured the strangulation for nearly 13 minutes. The previous legend was 8. The farmer stared at him, grinning like a child who just found a mythic treasure. The sun dipped below the horizon. The day was done. It was time to recover. To his surprise, dinner was served. The master insisted. To build resistance, fuel is fundamental. Gustavo walked into the kitchen to help. The old man cut him off instantly. Sit down. Wait. Just as well. Gustavo's cooking skills were zero. The offer was merely a polite bluff. Moments later, the meal arrived. A bowl of unidentifiable sludge that looked absolutely distressing. Terror filled his heart. What is in this? He asked. Trust me, the master replied. You do not want to know. Later, under the moonlight, our boy hung his gear to dry. In the shower, a new resolve formed. He had to learn to cook, to survive this food. But first, he needed intel from the old man. A longing struck him. If only he could call his father right now. Exhaustion crashed over him like a wave. He craved sleep, but the tiny shack offered no comfort. Asterisk, slap. Asterisk. A mosquito met its end. Master, Gustavo whispered. I have a question. Is there no electricity here? The farmer grunted. Lights bring the bugs. Go to sleep. The conversation was over. The old master was already deep in slumber on the hard floor. With no other choice, Gustavo lay down. A mumble came from the dark. This sleeping style sharpens the senses. It is your first night. You will struggle to sleep. But the master's wisdom was cut short. A rhythmic snore answered him. The boy was already out cold. This kid was a monster of adaptation. Dawn broke. Breakfast was served. And as expected, it was another bowl of nightmare fuel. Fighting back the nausea, Gustavo forces himself to thank the man for the meal. The farmer explains that an immortal's metabolism burns like a furnace, requiring massive amounts of fuel to function. Staring down at that culinary nightmare, Gustavo asks what fresh hell awaits them in training today. The answer is simple: cliff diving. It is the only way for the boy to master breath control during freefall and sharpen his senses to a razor's edge. Gustavo realizes the grim truth. For an immortal, consciousness is survival. Whether facing a bone-crushing impact or suffocation, the farmer nods in approval but issues a grave warning. There is another danger he must never overlook. Mobility is life. He cannot sacrifice his legs. Arms, however, are expendable shields. Losing a limb to protect the head is a trade an immortal must be willing to make. Those legs must be guarded at all costs. A simple knife wound to the thigh can be just as deadly as high-grade explosives in a battle. But the lecture ends abruptly as the farmer orders him to eat. Training waits for no one. Moments later, our boy is tossed off a massive canyon, Lion King style. After surviving that plunge, the brutal session finally ends, and the boy is sent packing. The second he boards the bus, he grabs his phone. Desperate for answers, Gustavo asks his father if this hellhole was really the right destination. The old man sounds confused. Gustavo immediately launches into a frantic narration of the absurd torture he just endured. His father dismisses it with a laugh. The boy is an immortal, after all. Death will not take him easily. Discovering his body's absolute limit is essential, but the most shocking revelation hits hard. Gustavo realizes that beneath the pain, he possesses a terrifying amount of raw strength. Now the kid demands to know when the exam starts, but the conversation is cut short. His mother is calling for help with chores, and the old man hangs up. The harsh truth settles in. Knowing the exam details will not change his fate. All he can do now is rest and prepare. Back in the sanctuary of home, a hot shower feels like a divine blessing. He kills time with video games. The kid is only 20 years old after all. At this age, virtual worlds hold more allure than romance for some men. Afterward, he finally sits down to a meal that looks like actual human food. He collapses into a soft, luxurious bed, a stark contrast to the unforgiving ground of the wilderness. The next morning, Gustavo wakes up feeling reborn. He foolishly believes this will be a perfect, peaceful day. Then, the matriarch drops the bomb. She needs his company today. It is devastating news for a guy who planned to do absolutely nothing. She claims he needs to study for college. And to his horror, his bags are already packed. She has located a private tutor nearby to drill him for entrance exams. Our boy is sentenced to stay with this stranger for the next 2 days. One look at his face says it all. He knows this will be a nightmare. A dark, ominous premonition begins to flood his heart. 48 hours of suffering await. The matriarch drops him at the address, promising to return soon, though it sounds like a threat. The kid asks if he gets an introduction, but his mother just waves goodbye with a piece of chilling advice. He must use his brain, especially since he possesses such a frail, pathetic body. Our protagonist stands there, feeling completely abandoned. The next 2 days will be hell. His family dynamics are truly twisted. The elevator descends deep underground until the doors slide open. Gustavo steps out, scanning the perimeter. His suspicion spikes. The floor is lined with heavy-duty treadmills and racks of iron weights. It is a full-blown combat gym. This is the last thing Gustavo expected to find, until a presence approaches him from the shadows. Our protagonist is stunned. A woman in gym gear, looking like a budget Wolverine cosplayer, steps forward. She already knows he is the matriarch's son. The mother's name is Korean, and quite hideous, so let us just call her Selma. The woman seems all too familiar with her. The boy confirms his identity, but quickly adds that he has absolutely no idea why he is here. The trainer scoffs. She knows he has been wasting time studying books. It is a tragic waste of his latent physical genius. The poor guy cannot even speak the truth yet. The matriarch has a very brutal philosophy when it comes to raising her children. They must own their actions. Her charming smile is merely a mask for a terrifyingly severe woman. If he had not taken those boxing lessons with Selma, the poor wretch would be dead meat by now. Perhaps this gym is just another torture chamber. The trainer tosses a watch at Gustavo. Traumatized by strange devices, the boy flinches and asks what this thing does. She replies coolly, "It is a gadget to measure things." Gustavo realizes the training has begun, and first, he must survive her evaluation. She points toward a machine in the corner. It is time to make the kid run until his lungs burn. Our boy steps onto the treadmill, feeling her gaze burning into him. Every movement is being calculated. The trainer sees right through him. He has never trained a day in his life. His form is pathetic, and his pace is abysmal. Yet his heart rate remains freakishly calm. Poor guy. He is getting roasted by a stranger when all he wanted to do was level up in his video games. The trainer sneers that newbies are incredibly lazy these days. To our protagonist, she does not even look old enough to lecture him like a veteran. Then it hits him. Supernaturals age at a glacial pace. Bored out of his mind, he asks just how long this marathon is going to last. The trainer barked at him to shut his mouth and keep moving. It was time to forge that pathetic, weak body into something made of steel. She declared that Gustavo would be reborn as a completely new man, a promise that sent a shiver of pure terror down our protagonist's spine. He retorted that he didn't need a second mother, earning a rare, sharp smile from the instructor. As daylight faded into darkness, Gustavo's legs kept churning without pause. Disbelief washed over the trainer. Was he exhausted already? If he stopped now, it wouldn't just be failure, it would be a disgrace to his entire bloodline. Lungs burning and gasping for air, the boy finally choked out a question. Just how long had he been trapped in this hell? The reality hit him hard. He had been sprinting for 14 straight hours. Even during his immortal training, he was allowed a wink of sleep. This was insanity. The trainer's voice cut through his fatigue. Without this discipline, Gustavo was nothing more than a hopeless amateur. But in a moment of twisted mercy, she decided to offer a distraction. A television screen flickered to life before his weary eyes. It displayed complex stretching routines he had to memorize immediately. A warrior needs fluidity. Rigidity is a fatal flaw in battle. Gustavo wanted to protest, but his voice had long since deserted him. Besides, the burden of tracking every passing second now rested on his shoulders. My apologies, everyone. It seems I miscalculated the depth of his suffering earlier. He has to track the time for the trainer's constant checks, memorize those bizarre contortions on screen, and obey every command she barks. It was pure, unadulterated cruelty. But when it rains, it pours. Gustavo had walked too far down this path to turn back now. His mind drifted back to the misty cliff. The farmer had praised him once, claiming his mastery over his senses was already exceptional. But good is not perfect. He needed absolute dominion. It wasn't about blocking one sense to sharpen another anymore. True power demanded the ability to coordinate every single sense simultaneously. Total awareness in the midst of chaos. And that was the hidden lesson. Watching the clock, memorizing the forms, and heeding the trainer's voice all at once. He did it all, while his body screamed in agony. Seconds dragged like hours, until finally, Gustavo crossed the 24-hour mark of continuous sprinting. Freedom at last. He stepped off the infernal machine as the trainer checked her phone to verify his victory. She sighed in relief. The boy's mind hadn't shattered under the pressure. But there was no rest, it was time to stretch. She launched into a demonstration to teach him the proper form. Her body contorted in exotic, impossible ways, leaving Gustavo staring in sheer awe. How could someone with muscles that dense be so fluid? Now, it was the disciple's turn to face the challenge. He threw his upper body backward, but his frame was like iron. He barely achieved a fraction of the required range. The trainer scoffed, reminding him that true flexibility is a garden that grows slowly. Normal humans need gradual repetition. But Gustavo? He is an immortal. He knew his body could regenerate from anything. Ignoring all logic, he snapped his spine into position. Sickening cracks filled the room, sending a wave of panic through the instructor as she rushed to aid him. That was the sound of bones breaking. She screamed at him to stop, but Gustavo simply brushed it off, claiming he was perfectly fine. Wiggling his fingers with a grin, Gustavo proved he had conquered the impossible pose through sheer brute force. The trainer realized then that she was teaching a monster. Though, hilariously, the poor guy was stuck like a pretzel and needed help untangling himself. Training was over. The feast began. A magnificent slab of meat awaited them, practically an entire roasted pig. Gustavo asked if they were sharing, but the trainer shook her head. That mountain of meat? That was just for him. She had her own entire pig to devour. It wasn't gluttony. It was a critical part of their warrior discipline. They had to stockpile energy for the battles ahead. Like starving beasts, they tore into the feast with savage intensity. "Toss the bones on the floor," she commanded. Someone else would clean the carnage later. At least the flavor was heavenly. She warned him to consume every scrap. Waste was a sin. Gustavo smirked. Leaving food behind wasn't in his nature anyway. Belly full, the trainer announced her departure, ordering the boy to immediately collapse into sleep. Finally alone in a real room, it was paradise compared to the woods, where he used to battle mosquitoes the size of prehistoric raptors. He finally had access to his phone. He dialed his mother, immediately sensing the matriarch's deep anxiety through the line. The truth came out. Selma herself had ordered the trainer to break him, but now, guilt was gnawing at her. The realization hit him. His hellish suffering had been amplified by his own mother's request. But her concern was twisted. She offered to make the training times harder times if it was too easy. Before he could protest, his father arrived, and she hung up. That conversation scrambled his brain. As the sun rose on the second day, he finally understood the essence of this transformer training. It was about repeating the impossible until it became mundane, breaking limits through sheer, stupid repetition backed by hidden science. Wired up to advanced electronic equipment, the verdict was delivered. The trainer's conclusion? His reflexes were absolute trash. To fix this, She pointed to a massive barbell. Gustavo eyed the iron plates, estimating a crushing weight of 45 kilos. Lifting heavy weights is child's play for a transformer. Their raw power is absolute. The instructor signals him to follow, leading him toward the real challenge. She orders him to sprint while hauling that massive load. But as fate would have it, misfortunes never come singly. The path ahead narrows drastically. It is not just a track. It is practically a tightrope suspended over nothingness. Focus on your center of gravity, she barks. But looking at that sliver of wood, he doubts if balancing a giant frame on it is even physically possible. Doubt creeps in. A fall from here feels like a one-way ticket to the hospital. The instructor scoffs. It is barely 3 meters, hardly a skyscraper. It won't kill him, sure, but she warns him with a steely gaze. Hitting the dirt is strictly forbidden. Transformers possess power, not invincibility. Unlike true immortals, they don't just regenerate from broken bones. Getting hurt comes with a cost. But Gustavo holds a secret card, his unique biology. Knowing pain is irrelevant to him, he abandons caution and sprints at full velocity. The instructor gasps at his recklessness, fearing a disaster. She doesn't realize his senses have been honed to a razor's edge. He times his times, an immortal. His equilibrium is supernatural. What looks like suicide to others is merely a playground stroll for him. Compared to walking on blades, this is heaven. He reaches the end expecting praise, only to hear the merciless command, 4 more sets. Now, Gustavo blasts through the course with identical, terrifying speed. The instructor's skepticism begins to shift into genuine intrigue. He clears the run flawlessly. Not a single wobble. Not a wasted movement. Time to raise the stakes. The wooden plank is replaced by a thin steel cable. Gustavo's confidence falters. This is a true test of limits. He questions the necessity of this insanity. Her reply cuts deep. That plank walk? Even toddlers can do that. Show me something real. She had expected him to fail, but she realizes she severely underestimated his potential. His sensory perception is in a league of its own. She drags out crash mats to cushion the inevitable plunge. She knows this trial breaks even the arrogant ones. If you slip, grab the wire or break your neck, she advises. The only mercy is that he is stripped of the extra weights this time. It triggers his competitive spirit. Sure, it is brutal, but it pales in comparison to the torture of immortal cultivation. Still, a steel wire is no sidewalk. He takes the first tentative step. The cable is taut, offering high resistance and minimal give. It will hold him. The air is still. The mats are waiting below. The equation is simple. There is absolutely nothing to fear here. Courage surges through his veins. Gustavo chooses the path of chaos. He dashes across the razor-thin wire. A sudden slip. He nearly plummets halfway through. He instantly throttles back, switching to calculated, precise footsteps. Regaining absolute coordination, he pushes forward. The instructor watches, eyes wide, completely captivated by his adaptability. Finally, the session concludes. "We meet again next weekend," she says, her voice carrying a newfound respect. Later, in the passenger seat of his mother's car, curiosity gnaws at him. Fortunately, the matriarch has brought the answers he seeks. She cannot fathom her son failing at anything, but she reminds him, "It is time you mastered the vessel you were born into. Weakness is not an option forever." Her words strike a nerve, terrifying him because he knows he is already monstrously strong. His eyes are set on the Marines. This physical conditioning is just a stepping stone toward that dream. By evening, the feast on the table matches his ambition. The matriarch watches in awe. He devours the meal like a starving beast, his appetite insatiable. "I have learned to appreciate your cooking," he admits. He adds a playful thought. Muscular men who can cook? The ladies love that combination. His mother chuckles, nodding in agreement. The cooking part is true enough, but you need the muscles first, she teases mercilessly. Right now? You look like a bohemian loafer wasting time at the domino tables. Still, he is determined to master the culinary arts. It is a simple pleasure the other immortals seem to have forgotten. As he relaxes, his mind drifts to the future. He prays the next session will be innovative, and perhaps involve less agony. He clings to one naive certainty. Surely, it can't get any worse than this. Oh, our poor naive protagonist. The scene shifts instantly. He is plummeting through the air in total freefall. Boom! His body slams into the earth with a shockwave that scatters the birds. The farmer stands over him. "Congratulations on finishing the warm-up. Everything before this was just a tutorial," the old master scoffs. "Merely the entry ticket to the true path. Being hurled off a cliff was just the morning stretch." He dusts himself off, the impact barely registering. Unlike the endurance tests of the Transformers, this pain is sharp but fleeting. However, the farmer is a tyrant of a teacher. "Bullets? Your body ignores them," the farmer lectures. "But a blade that severs limbs? That is a complication even you cannot easily fix. If you must take a hit, take a shallow cut, but do not lose a limb. Evasion is no longer a choice, it is survival." A demonic grin spreads across the farmer's face. He doesn't just teach pain, he revels in it. Why the sword? Gustavo asks, eyeing the blade. The farmer narrows his eyes. I thought you were the smart one. You tell me. It is time for the boy to master the blade's edge, learning to dodge or take the hit with minimum consequences. The poor guy fights for his life, desperately guarding his head while the farmer attacks with lethal dedication. Yet, the master notices something the boy is evolving. He must learn the art of damage mitigation. Minor wounds are inevitable, but he has to survive the fatal ones. Steel sings through the air and finds its mark. The first strike lands, carving a painful path across Gustavo's flesh. The farmer barks out advice: block thigh attacks with shins, or angle the body to turn deep gashes into shallow cuts. Basically, Gustavo is mastering the art of getting slashed correctly. His regenerative powers are nothing short of monstrous. Unfortunately, that only motivates his sadistic trainer to push harder. The gloves are off now. Gustavo realizes his nightmare is just beginning. His lifeblood is practically watering the garden at this point. Weak and trembling, he listens as the farmer reveals a fatal truth. For an immortal, blood loss is the ultimate enemy. Staunching the flow is priority number one. Exhaustion finally overtakes Gustavo, and they break for a much-needed meal. He volunteers to handle dinner. Back at the shack, our battered protagonist sets up his humble camping stove. He whips up a stunning pasta dish, a recipe passed down from his mother. Even the stoic farmer digs in, admitting the kid has genuine talent. Gustavo feels a wave of relief that his master has taste buds. But then, the farmer twists the knife. Cooking is also a discipline. Learning to stomach repulsive flavors is part of the training. Survival means eating anything, no matter how vile. Back outside, the physical hell resumes. In a flash, the farmer vanishes and reappears, burying a fist in Gustavo's gut. The impact is devastating. His blood pressure crashes instantly. It is time for the next lesson: regenerating internal organs. Step 1. Apply pressure to stop the internal bleeding. Organs take longer to knit back together, but what truly terrifies Gustavo is the speed. He never even saw the shadow of movement. The farmer explains he masked his energy, rendering Gustavo's heightened senses useless. Our boy's eyes light up. He needs that technique. Meanwhile, his supernatural body has already finished repairing the damage. Seeing the hunger in his eyes, the farmer offers to teach him the secrets of presence concealment. Gustavo does not hesitate for a second. 2 agonizing days later, our boy stands in the elevator again. He is ready for another round of torture with his muscular female trainer. A dark chill runs down his spine as a gun barrel levels at him. He asks if they are rubber bullets. The trainer smirks. Maybe. Bang! A shot screams past his ear. It is a gas pistol, but those custom rounds are no joke. Lesson 1 of the day: dodge the bullets. Panic sets in, and the poor guy sprints across the arena as shots ring out like thunder. The trainer states the obvious with a straight face. Bullets are dangerous. Thanks for the tip, Captain Obvious. He needs to find cover or move with chaotic unpredictability. A round grazes his arm, stinging like a hornet. The trainer warns him sharply, don't get hit. A solid shot takes him out of the fight. If impact is unavoidable, he must ensure it isn't fatal. This agony mirrors the immortal training perfectly. As he suffers, Gustavo realizes a fascinating truth about his dual existence. The tactics are completely different, tailored to specific biological strengths. Neither master is teaching him how to fight. They are teaching him how to survive, refining his vessel to absolute perfection. Immortals must avoid complex blade wounds and high-caliber destruction. Transformers, however, laugh at edged weapons. Their dense bodies can tank sword strikes without issue. Even shotguns pose little threat to their hardened frames. Between the Transformers' speed and the weapon's poor long-range accuracy, they are walking tanks. Soon, the floor is littered with spent casings. Time for a brief respite. The trainer orders him to run with heavy weights. Honestly, it beats getting stabbed or shot. Next, he faces the steel high wire again. But halfway across the abyss, a suffocating, murderous aura crushes down on him. The fear is primal, paralyzing his senses. He tries to flee but loses his footing, plummeting to the ground in absolute terror. Frantic and shaking, Gustavo scans the room for the source of that killing intent. The trainer stands perfectly still, a monster in human skin. She asks calmly if he actually felt that pressure. Our protagonist is bewildered. She explains it was wild energy, and she is shocked a rookie could detect it. Gustavo begs her to stop. He felt like his heart was about to explode in his chest. She notes that he will get used to the sensation once he wields that energy himself. But for now, back to the grind. 2 days later, he stops falling. He begins to adapt, reacting to the crushing energy pressure with instinct rather than fear. His immortal senses are the cheat code here. They allow him to resist the mental weight that would crush a normal human. By locking his core, walking the steel wire becomes second nature. The trainer watches in silence, impressed by the boy's terrifying potential. Gustavo keeps pushing past his limits. The immortal regimen feels like a casual stroll through the depths of hell. The farmer switches weapons constantly to force organ regeneration. He even deploys lethal traps, turning the training ground into a minefield of death. Prolonged agony could shatter the mind, a weakness the boy had to eliminate at all costs. Immortals viewed their physical forms as mere tools, disposable weapons in war. That is why he had to master pain control. If the agony took over, his thoughts would crumble. Across town, the transformer training pushed him past his limits. Our boy moved through the shadows, his body weighed down by heavy gear, never breaking the rhythm of his lifting regimen. The intensity was ramping up. Evolution was imminent. His father had been away on business for 10 long days. Upon his return, the welcome from his wife was nothing short of heartwarming. Their love was still burning bright. Meanwhile, a different kind of intensity was happening elsewhere. The farmer finally stopped stabbing our boy and began instructing Gustavo in the lethal art of bladed weapons. Guns were child's play to him. But martial arts? That flowed through Gustavo's veins like instinct. Perhaps the transformer conditioning unlocked his potential. Conversely, the muscular instructor shifted gears, teaching our boy the cold precision of firearms. She admitted martial arts had value, but for him, the basics were enough. With his monstrous physical strength, technique was just a decoration. As a hybrid absorbing two opposing disciplines, the synthesis was terrifyingly natural. Just like that, 2 months evaporated. Gustavo settled into the brutal rhythm. Even the old man noticed the boy's obsessive dedication to the gym. He remarked on the lad's impressive strength, a comment the matriarch took as a victory. But in this house, even a simple compliment was just another excuse for the couple to start flirting. It made Gustavo wonder how he remained an only child. His parents certainly put a lot of effort into that particular game. Alone in the bathroom, Gustavo stared into the mirror, analyzing his own reflection. Why was he still single? He was young, handsome, and in peak condition. Surely his time for romance was overdue. Suddenly, the matriarch's phone pierced the silence. She had an appointment with the mother of a young woman. The daughter was in her final year, and her mother was consumed with worry. The father was left alone in the living room silence. He noticed a cell phone left behind. Our boy came hunting for a hairdryer, but stepping into the room, he realized he was alone. He sat down, reaching for his own device. A crucial test loomed on the horizon tomorrow, and our boy had to be ready. His classmates whispered, thinking it strange he shunned college. But they didn't understand. That had never been Gustavo's path. His destiny was sealed 9 years ago, the day a massive black hole tore the sky above Earth. The poor kid had been buried alive under tons of crushing rubble. Through the dust, he saw a figure charging headfirst toward the invaders. In that heartbeat, the boy made a vow. When he grew up, he would become a legend just like that. But this dream would break his mother's heart. All she ever wanted was for her son to live a safe, normal life. Outside, the matriarch rendezvoused with a mysterious contact. It was our protagonist's trainer, asking what lie she had told to get away this time. Selma replied smoothly. She had simply claimed to be visiting a neighbor. As they settled in for a drink, the trainer posed a question. Was Selma not curious about the depths of Gustavo's training? A shadow of sadness crossed Selma's face. She held no high expectations. The offspring of a normal human and a transformer usually resulted in mediocrity. She hadn't asked, terrified of the answer. She assumed the boy was failing. Meanwhile, the protagonist's father was locked in a critical call of his own. On the other end, the farmer had vital intelligence to deliver. He dropped the bombshell. The protagonist was an irregular. Back with the matriarch, her hopes were humble. She just wanted him strong enough to avoid being snatched and turned into a lab rat. The trainer knew the darkness of that reality all too well. The organization sought to engineer a hybrid that surpassed all others. The mythical irregulars. But history was paved with failures. They always resulted in twisted monsters, cursing the world with the chaotic powers of both races. Science reached a grim conclusion. Diluting supernatural blood with humanity always weakened the final vessel. But the trainer smiled. Selma's son is truly exceptional. While at home, the old man worried Gustavo was weaker than the average recruit. The farmer corrected him immediately. The boy was a certified genius. He had already taught the little prodigy the high-level art of masking his own energy signature. This stunned his father. Such a feat was nearly impossible for a novice. Back to Selma. The trainer continued. There is a monster hiding inside our boy. He already knows how to channel wild energy. The revelation left his mother completely paralyzed. The news was too good to be true. Both parents stood incredulous, believing such power to be impossible. But the master stood firm. The boy was special, a singularity. Naturally, relief washed over his parents. Pride swelled in their chests for the heir born to them. The next morning, our boy woke up groggy, mumbling a soft good morning to his mother. His father had already vanished to the workplace battlefield. The matriarch smiled, gesturing for the boy to dig in. Gustavo blinked, surprised by the royal feast spread before him. It was a breakfast fit for a king. Selma's eyes twinkled. Had he forgotten the significance of this date? Today was the civil service exam. Remembering the farmer's warnings, our boy knew this wouldn't be simple. Every drop of sweat was for this moment. In a flash, he devoured everything on the table. His mother's voice cut through the air, asking if he was truly ready. Gustavo replied that he had pushed his mind to the brink, studying until the test haunted his very nightmares. The poor guy actually suffered through night terrors. Selma's face twisted with worry, warning that the old man would be crushed if he failed, but her expression told a different story. The matriarch had zero desire to see her son become a government dog. Deep down, she prayed for his failure. It would be a blessing in disguise. Gustavo silenced her fears with a calm assurance. She saw a fragile boy, unaware that an eternal, immortal soul resided within him. Memories of darker days flashed through his mind, times when words failed, and he had to survive a brutal boxing duel against his own mother. Snapping back to the present, Selma pumped him up. She insisted he possessed the raw power needed to crush a test of this magnitude. As the elevator descended, Gustavo let the smooth rhythm of bossa nova soothe him. But remembering his heightened immortal senses, he quickly cleared his throat to mask his enjoyment. He had been vibing with Chico Bark, lost in the melody, until the steel doors slid open and reality crashed back in. A figure stood waiting outside. Our protagonist froze in awkward silence. It seemed this girl knew exactly who Gustavo was. She teased that when she inevitably received a marriage proposal, he wouldn't need to sing. Gustavo coolly told Helena to save her breath. The girl pressed on, demanding to know when he would confess his undying love. But the protagonist shut her down cold. She simply wasn't his type. That rejection triggered a declaration of war. The girl mobilized her strategic advantages, readying her troops for a full-scale assault on his heart. With the diplomatic situation critical and conflict imminent, Helena played her ace card, her beauty and intellect. Yet, these threats bounced harmlessly off Gustavo's shield of indifference. He exited the elevator with the grace of a king, tossing back a warning that she needed to quit these childish games. Striding down the street, he threw a command over his shoulder, ordering her to cease her pursuit immediately. Helena demanded to know his objective. When Gustavo revealed it was the civil service exam, the girl was left completely thunderstruck. She never imagined a free spirit like him would bow to the government. As she stammered about him being busy, Gustavo tried to untangle himself from her web. She bragged about her upcoming university life. Though a year younger, she was heading to an all-women's college, a sanctuary from the hordes of boys who desired her intensely. Gustavo didn't bat an eye. He simply told her to focus on her academics rather than her popularity. Watching him walk away, Helena shouted that she'd love to date him, but our protagonist ignored her existence, a move that would drive any girl to the brink of revolt. Gustavo realized time hadn't changed her a bit. She was still stubborn, bold, and relentless. But his focus shifted as the bus approached its final destination. Gustavo stepped into the massive government complex. He had arrived ahead of schedule, yet the labyrinthine halls required navigation. Approaching the reception, he announced he was there for the special exam. A hulking man in a suit, rippling with muscle, looked down and questioned his intent. The guard's gaze was heavy with menace, a clear attempt to intimidate our boy before he even began. Disbelief flooded the guard's eyes as he demanded identification. After scrutinizing the data, he finally allowed Gustavo to proceed to the elevator. On a higher floor, another checkpoint awaited. A woman asked for his credentials one more time. Unlike the brute downstairs, she was polite and efficient, directing Gustavo to the end of the corridor. Finally, he stood before the door to the special exam room. Gustavo prayed the room was soundproof. Given the carnage he expected, blood was going to spill, and he didn't want the screams alerting the city outside. Entering a state of supreme combat readiness, Gustavo prepared his body for the ambush that surely awaited him beyond the threshold. He was certain this exam would dwarf his hellish training, but when the door opened, he was met with a shocking sight, a completely empty room. Inside sat a lone man, noting Gustavo was the first arrival. The guy was completely bald, and he calmly requested our boy's documents. In this reality, baldness had been cured ages ago. To see a man without hair was rare. It could only mean one terrifying thing. He was bald by choice. Handing over his papers, Gustavo sensed a dark, suspicious aura radiating from the staff in this place. The bald master assigned him number 48 and pointed to a seat. None of this resembled the combat arena he had trained for. Gustavo expected an assassin to strike from the shadows at any second. He remained wire tense, his senses expanded to catch the slightest killing intent. Minutes ticked by until the room flooded with other candidates. But strangely, they were all armed with textbooks and notes. It was then that the truth hit our protagonist like a freight train. The biggest shock of his entire life. The bald man rose from his desk, Assuming everyone was ready for battle, he asked a simple question. Does anyone need a pen? Cold sweat instantly drenched our protagonist. He raised a trembling hand, signaling that he, too, was unarmed in the face of this writing utensil requirement. A million questions swirled in the heavy air, but our poor boy had zero answers. He knew something was terribly wrong, but the target of his blame was unclear. It suddenly became clear. Our protagonist's brutal physical training had been completely unnecessary suffering. He had pushed his body to the limit to survive this test. But a catastrophic error had occurred. The real challenge was happening in minutes. And it wasn't a brawl. Fate had played a cruel joke. Our boy stood on the precipice of the most important exam of his life without even a pen to his name. The bald examiner took pity on him, handing over a writing tool. It was a standard ballpoint, the final confirmation that this was a mere theoretical exam. It looked exactly like a high school quiz. Our boy stood there, feeling like the punchline of a cosmic joke. He scanned the room, realizing every single candidate possessed god-tier visuals. Some looked ready to debut as idols right there and then. Yet, amidst this sea of beauty, one presence stood out above the rest. Even this stranger's hands were a work of art. It was like looking at a living, breathing magazine cover. The mysterious figure caught him staring but chose to dismiss our protagonist entirely. Gustavo flinched, humiliation burning his cheeks, praying he hadn't just been labeled a total creep. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted as crew members marched in. They hauled massive panels, sealing the protagonist inside a solitary cubicle. The stage was set for the written exam. But just as the tension peaked, a straggler finally decided to show up. Candidate number 50 made his entrance. Under normal circumstances, he would have been disqualified instantly, yet somehow, he was allowed to stay. Gustavo flipped the page and froze. The first question looked impossible. This wasn't the academic nightmare he had studied for. Compared to this, walking on knives would have been a vacation. But then, his eyes locked onto a specific detail. Question 1. Treating a severe leg injury. The academic answer? Complicated. The real answer for their kind? Just stop the bleeding. For an immortal, a wound that size is nothing but a scratch. A lesson burned into his memory by the chaotic teachings of that crazy farmer. As he scanned the page, realization hit. These weren't textbook questions. They were tests of battlefield survival he already mastered. Since our boy never went into shock from blood loss, the farmer had exploited that trait with sadistic joy. Now, the test asked what to do when you can't dodge a blade. The answer was brutal but simple. Sacrifice an arm to block the strike. It seemed too easy, proving our boy had been forged in fire for this exact moment. It felt like a scene straight out of cinema, the protagonist knowing every answer without ever opening a textbook. Just like the legendary film times Slumdog Millionaire asterisk. He wasn't guessing. He was reliving his trauma as knowledge. This exam wasn't about intelligence. It was a test of self-awareness. Did the candidates truly understand the monsters they were? A subject our boy knew intimately. The answers flowed effortlessly. He hadn't just been training all this time. He had been studying the art of immortality without even realizing it. Then came the final hurdle. A chilling question. How can an immortal be permanently killed, excluding drowning or burial? For Gustavo, the answer was painfully obvious. He scribbled it down, dropped his pen, and checked the clock. The bald proctor frowned. It was far too early. He assumed our protagonist had cracked under pressure and given up. With an entire hour left on the clock, the proctor dismissed him. Gustavo stood up and walked out of that room like a boss. Outside, he ran into the receptionist with the stylish short hair. She stopped him, her voice dropping to a whisper. Everything here was top secret. She needed his signature on a confidentiality agreement. He casually mentioned his status as a human hybrid, and she responded with a warm, friendly smile. That simple gesture sent Gustavo over the moon, exposing just how inexperienced he really was. One polite interaction with a beauty, and he was already planning their wedding. His delusion was instant and absolute. Night fell over the city. Inside the office, the bald proctor was grading papers, and his jaw hit the floor. The protagonist's exam was flawless. The final answer was chillingly accurate. Strangulation, freezing, incineration, or total pulverization, the only true threats to their kind. Killing an immortal is a nightmare task, and over time, they lose their fear of death. This curriculum was designed to reinstill that fear. That last question was the ultimate filter. It separated those who played hero from those who knew their own biology. Regeneration is a gift, not a shield. Being unkillable doesn't mean you can't be destroyed. They needed to understand the risks, and that half-human hybrid showed terrifying potential on paper, but looking at him, he didn't seem like an immortal warrior at all. He was the first to arrive, the first to leave, and didn't even bring a pencil. 2 weeks later, destiny called. Gustavo picked up the phone. He had passed. But the victory wasn't complete until he showed the results to his mother. He slammed the score on the tabletop of the class. The matriarch was stunned, but shock quickly turned to beaming pride. She had to tell her husband immediately. Seizing the moment, Gustavo asked for a celebratory feast. With a high score like that, his mom approved the request without hesitation. When the old man finally came home, Gustavo was thrilled to see him, but let's be real, his eyes were locked on the grocery bags. Soon, the sound of sizzling steaks filled the air. The small family gathered, celebrating a future that was finally looking bright. The old man wasn't surprised. He never doubted his son for a second. The matriarch just basked in the glow of the good news. Gustavo laughed, admitting the test was a breeze. That crazy farmer might have been a lunatic, but his methods were effective. Now, only the interviews remained a much simpler hurdle. His mom asked the big question: which department would he be joining? The old man casually mentioned the Ministry of Interior and Security. That answer triggered a silent alarm in our boy's head. He noticed the subtle shift in his father's tone. The old man was dodging the truth, but his wife remained blissfully unaware. Gustavo's mind raced. Why would the government hire immortals? What was the true mission? The boy had questions, but he knew his father would take those secrets to the grave. Later that night, he tried to pry some tips out of the old man, but his father remained a stone wall. Our protagonist savored the victory, but he knew this peace was temporary. The real trial, the interviews, was approaching fast. His father remained a fortress of silence, offering no cheats or tips. He simply commanded his son to speak the raw truth, for this interview was a crucible to test the very steel of his character. As Gustavo stepped out, tailored to perfection, his mother's anxiety spiked. Yet, she masked her worry with a smile, prophesying that her boy would conquer the challenge ahead. Gustavo thanked her, though his mind was already miles away. Alone in the elevator, the weight of the moment settled in, his thoughts racing through every possible scenario. Catching his reflection in the mirrored walls, a surge of vanity hit him. He looked less like an applicant and more like a celebrity. But his ego trip was cut short. Helena was there, witnessing his narcissism, caught lost in his own beauty. Gustavo couldn't wrap his head around it. Why did fate keep throwing this woman into his path? Paranoia crept in. Was she stalking him? Helena laughed it off, claiming she was merely flowing in the same direction. A coincidence of destiny. She flirted with the idea of taking classes together, but Gustavo shut it down with the busy card. Still, she landed a critical hit before leaving. That suit makes you look dangerous. Confidence fully restored. Our protagonist strode forward. He claimed he already knew his destiny as he walked into the waiting room, ready for war. The atmosphere was suffocating. Every other candidate prepared with the intensity of a corporate slave, oblivious to the true nature of the job. Then Gustavo saw him, the visual god from the last encounter. Their gazes locked for a heartbeat before the handsome stranger looked away, dismissing him. Gustavo didn't know if it was arrogance or disinterest, but he made a tactical decision. Keep his distance from that icy citizen for now. The tension was thick enough to cut until number 48 was called. That's me. Gustavo took a breath and entered the lion's den. The panel was a freak show. The first examiner was a redhead with skin so pale he resembled a melting candle, a nickname that likely haunted him. Beside the exotic pale man sat the short-haired girl, the friendly face from before. She opened with the classic trap. Why do you want this job? The honest answer? My dad forced me, but saying that would be social suicide. He needed a better script. Our boy shifted into hero mode. I seek to define my own limits, he declared, and to fulfill a lifelong dream of shielding this nation and its people from darkness. The redhead narrowed his eyes, probing for weakness. Are you willing to die for others? Gustavo didn't flinch. I'm not sure. Blind sacrifice is foolish, he continued. My life depends on the situation. I calculate efficiency before I bleed. The examiners scribbled furiously. The scratching of pens on paper made sweat bead on Gustavo's neck. They fired question after question, and he answered with rehearsed precision. Then came the curveball from the girl. Your mother and your girlfriend are drowning. Who do you save? Gustavo smirked. Both. I swim like a shark. She pressed on. 1 bullet, 2 enemies. I shoot one and crush the other with my bare hands. The sheer audacity of the image hung in the air. It cracked the professional mask of the friendly girl, forcing a small, amused smile. Days later, the tension had dissolved. Gustavo lay in his room, drowning in phone videos, his laughter echoing through the house. The matriarch watched him with suspicion. It was unnatural for him to be this idle after such a high-stakes interview. She urged him to be productive, but Gustavo realized the trap one wrong word, and he'd be enduring a lecture from hell. He laid out his grand strategy for the day. Gaming, feasting, bathroom breaks, and sleep. That answer summoned the demon within his mother. Her eyes flashed. The instincts of a shifter are complex, she warned. Let the beast take the wheel, and catastrophe will follow. She spoke of horror stories, uncontrolled violence, and heavy prison sentences for those who let their inner monster run wild. Remember the legend? She hissed. The boy who surrendered to his desires and was left howling at the moon? You must master your control, Gustavo. But watching the news, our boy knew the truth. It wasn't the shifters destroying the city, it was the erratic magic users causing all the chaos. The matriarch ignored the logic. Self-mastery is the only way. Why do you think I dragged you hiking when you first awakened? It wasn't for the fresh air. It was survival training. A way to cage the beast. Then came her ultimate solution. Find a girlfriend. She insisted that love would anchor his soul, preventing his primal instincts from causing a disaster. Curiosity piqued. She leaned in. Do you like boys? Our protagonist choked out a hard no. Another month locked in his room was clearly driving her insane. She even suggested he return to his original path, unaware that the old man had advised postponing everything for the new job. But the flashback ended, revealing the truth. The notification had arrived. He was approved. Now the real challenge began. A grueling 5-week boot camp. Reading the fine print, the boy nearly went into cardiac arrest. Starting salary, $45,000 plus elite benefits. It was absurd. A proposal so enchanting it felt like a deal with the devil. He burned to tell his parents, but the memory of the secretary stopped him. His father's immortality was a state secret. Leaking it could destroy their marriage. The warning was absolute. He had to swallow the good news. His mother could know nothing. With burning sincerity, our protagonist made a vow. I will become the king of the Ministry of Interior. The matriarch scoffed at his sudden ambition, seeing only the boy who had spent the last week in his pajamas. Yet, the conversation settled her nerves. Deep down, relief washed over her. Her son wasn't drifting aimlessly anymore. If the new generation of shifters had a leader like him, perhaps their dark reputation could finally be rewritten. Gustavo smiled, content in his skin. He was happy to be a hybrid. In the old days, his kind were ticking time bombs, but he was different. He was the evolution. Gustavo was a living anomaly, blessed with a constitution that defied all logic. While others struggled, he slept like a king and devoured anything in sight. Finally, the summons arrived. The chosen ones were already moving toward their destiny. Our protagonist stood ready at the station, prepared to turn the page and begin a legendary new chapter. Once aboard, Gustavo scanned the world outside. The heat waves shimmering off the pavement confirmed the brutal peak of summer. Yet, inside this sanctuary, the air was crisp and cool. The reinforced glass repelled the sun, and the luxury coach was strangely half-empty. It wasn't until he stepped inside that the realization hit him. His intuition flared. He could spot the hybrids instantly. It wasn't just their unique appearances. It was their aura, a distinct energy signature that his training allowed him to perceive with crystal clarity, and the strongest presence belonged to the young man beside him. A guy with visuals so sharp they could cut glass. Eavesdropping on the hushed whispers, Gustavo realized alliances were already forming. Networking was the first step to survival here. It echoed the wisdom his mentor had drilled into him. The old man had insisted that strange encounters often forged the strongest bonds. He was proud that Gustavo was finally stepping out as a young adult. The mentor was relieved Gustavo could handle the city noise. For the old man, urban life had been a torture chamber. Gustavo had asked why. The answer was chilling. His mentor suffered agonizing insomnia, his heightened senses picking up every pin drop. Shifters must learn to shackle their own impulses. It is the only way to master the senses. The old man lived his life with earplugs just to stay sane. He went as far as buying a 4-story fortress, isolating himself in the center with soundproof walls. Gustavo's ability to sleep peacefully proved his control was already god-tier. Gustavo finally understood the magnitude of that feat. What seemed impossible to others was as natural as breathing to him. Since shifters struggle with sensory overload, his natural immunity was a massive tactical advantage. His mentor had warned him. His new classmates would be walking nerves, hypersensitive to everything. Caution was mandatory. Recalling that warning, Gustavo tried to break the ice with the pretty boy. It was their third encounter, yet the background character remained stubborn as a mule. The audacity was impressive. The guy actually asked if they knew each other, despite having locked eyes multiple times before. Our protagonist tried to jog his memory, but the arrogant extra gaslit him, insisting this was their first meeting. Following his father's advice about making friends was proving to be a nightmare. Gustavo's patience snapped. The icy prince next to him was either amnesiac or a terrible liar. Giving up, he turned his sights on a new target, a blonde girl nearby. Our fighter approached with polite charm, but the girl immediately profiled him, labeling him a hybrid on sight. She assumed his powers came from his father. She mocked his peaceful childhood, guessing he had no clue about the hell they were walking into. She dismissed him as an immature child. The insult struck a nerve, spiking Gustavo's irritation. She didn't stop there. Your observation skills are trash, she scoffed. Look around. Everyone here is on edge. That's why we sit in the dark. Silence is a necessity, not a choice. Talking in here is torture for us. She explained that the noisy ones were the hybrids, lacking the refined sensitivity of the purebloods. She demanded this foolish, ignorant boy shut his mouth. Gustavo's hand twitched. He desperately wanted to smack some humility into this petulant extra. Violence seemed like the only logical solution, but deep down, he knew she wasn't entirely wrong. His mentor used to call him Mr. Sensitive. He had mastered his senses, but he knew that sensitivity was never an excuse for blatant rudeness. After her harsh lecture, a heavy silence fell over the bus. Even opening a bag of chips now would make him public enemy number one. Suddenly, a new threat emerged, a danger far greater than any enemy. His stomach betrayed him. The pressure was building. A massive gaseous assault was demanding release into the world. Gustavo stopped caring. Screw these arrogant elites. It was time to deliver a biological payload directly to the blonde girl who insulted him. He unleashed a stench that saturated the entire bus. Gasping for air, the blonde girl choked out, "You are truly disgusting." Her suffering brought Gustavo a wave of pure euphoria. He had served her a plate of sweet, stinking revenge. Hours after the chemical warfare incident, the bus finally rolled to a halt at their destination. The candidates disembarked, luggage in hand. They were in the middle of nowhere. Suddenly, a shadow approached Gustavo. It was the noisy duo from earlier. Surprisingly friendly, they had one burning question. "What on earth did you eat?" Gustavo recognized them instantly. He admitted the truth with zero shame. He just really needed to fart. The green-haired fighter is Johan. As for the crimson-haired delinquent, let's just call him Red. No way am I memorizing another complex name today. Gustavo fired back, joking that Red looked like the type who would drop a bomb like that, not him. The comment cracked a smile on his new friend's face. But within seconds, Red realized the truth. This protagonist has absolutely no idea what kind of world he just stepped into. The location is a massive training facility, vast and imposing. A thunderous voice commands the recruits to snap into formation, creating 5 distinct columns. Efficiency is the only rule here. Gustavo scans the crowd, realizing the number of competitors has swelled significantly. Approximately 100 souls stand ready. But something is strange. A short jog has left them gasping for air, lungs burning with exhaustion. Our protagonist stares in disbelief. Is this truly the elite selection? The absurdity continues with the instructors. The terrifying bald man from the exam returns, flanked by the candle wielder and the deceptively kind woman. Instructor Lee, the bald tyrant, announces their fate. For 30 days he will break them, and he is already disgusted by what he sees. Their physical condition is utterly pathetic. He barks an order, pointing a callous finger toward the distant tree line. His eyes gleam with malice. He demands a race. Only the first 15 to reach the other side will survive the cut. The herd of extras surges forward in a chaotic stampede. Leading the pack are the hybrids, the golden-haired beauty, and the silent princess. Gustavo remains unimpressed by their pace. Even hopping on one leg, he could leave them all in the dust. But glory is not his goal. He calculates his speed perfectly, aiming for 14th place to avoid the spotlight. He recalls the warnings of the past. He must hide his true nature as a transformer at all costs. Discovery means disaster. To the world, he is a monstrosity. A ticking time bomb walking among humans, a future threat that must be eliminated. With surgical precision, he controls his stride, slipping into the pack to secure his target position. To sell the performance, he feigns total collapse, gasping that the run was torture. Seriously? These recruits have the stamina of chain smokers. Instructor Lee dismisses the failures with a menacing glare. They are unfit for his hell. His eyes promise violence to those who remain. For the survivors, the nightmare is just beginning. It is time for push-ups. With every descent, they must chant their new identity. I am a loser. Gustavo finds it amusing, reminiscent of corporate brainwashing tactics. But the atmosphere darkens. Even the smiling female instructor radiates a terrifying aura, freezing the blood of the struggling recruits. The pressure is overwhelming. One boy begins to tremble violently, his will shattering. He looks ready to soil himself. Instructor Lee scoffs. In his era, such weakness would never be tolerated. This generation is the worst in history. He snaps at a hybrid to shut his mouth. A scream that loud could rupture eardrums in this echo chamber. Here, control is absolute. Silence and discipline are the laws everyone must obey. Gustavo realizes the grim truth. These so-called immortals are frail weaklings. Lee continues his tirade, claiming none would have passed in the old days. He offers a choice to a struggling recruit: quit now or face punishment. Filled with foolish motivation, the boy chooses the punishment. For the sadistic instructor, this is delightful. A sickening crack echoes through the hall. Our protagonist flinches. It was the distinct sound of bone snapping. He needs to confirm the damage. Bending low, he peeks through his legs. Indeed, the poor fool's arm is twisted at an unnatural angle. Gustavo observes coldly. For immortals, a broken bone is merely a scratch. Instructor Lee lays down the law. Punishment equals fractures. Profanity will cost you 2 points. Loud volume is 1 point. Unauthorized combat is 5 points. The rest, They will learn through pain. Lee asks if the recruit enjoys the show. Gustavo feels a cold sweat forming on his brow. Stepping away from the platoon, the bald tyrant declares them all trash once more, ordering everyone to their feet. Even the winners of the race are subpar. He introduces himself properly as Instructor Lee. He is the ruler of this platoon. The woman steps forward. She explains that physical stamina dictates regeneration speed. Even as rookies, they must cultivate the ability to heal instantly. To Gustavo, she is Instructor Darum. Good heavens, what a wretched name. She plays the role of the benevolent technical instructor. Then, the candlebearer steps into the light. His name is Kim. His introduction is simple and chilling. I will kill you all. A death threat from a petulant background character. Instructor Darham translates his bloodlust into a lesson on the physiology of immortality. Gustavo realizes the crazy farmer had already beaten him to the punch. Lee opens the gates. Anyone who wants to leave can go now. In fact, he would enjoy watching them flee. But Gustavo digs in his heels. He will endure the first month. He is certain it will get easier. He just needs to avoid taking a bullet to the head. Lee commands silence. He welcomes the recruits to their new reality. Welcome to hell. 10 souls per dorm. It is time to suit up. Gustavo surveys the facility. It resembles the set of a B-grade horror movie. Johan stands nearby, drenched in sweat and desperate for a shower. Seeing Johan and the redheads, Gustavo feels a flicker of comfort. The elite blonde and the silent princess are here too. The stage is set. Beside, our hero stood a wheezing mess of a man, sweating like a grease trap. Gustavo realized the immortal physique came in all shapes. A towering foreigner loomed nearby, flanked by a pair of ghostly, eccentric twins. Then there was a girl so plain she blended into the background. Even her raven hair looked washed out and dull. Gender separation? Non-existent. As Gustavo scanned for a changing spot, the blonde snapped at him, warning him to keep his eyes to himself. With eyes colder than permafrost, Gustavo shot back that he had zero interest. Of course, her massive ego wouldn't let her believe that. She judged him instantly, clueless about his shifter bloodline. Cutting the tension, the pale girl suggested they set ground rules for survival. Her voice was unexpectedly melodic, catching Gustavo off guard. The silent princess declared that all hygiene matters must happen outside. The penalty for breaking this rule? Death. The blonde nodded in immediate, ruthless agreement. Even his own allies turned on him. The entire room sided against Gustavo, leaving him isolated on an island of opposition. The silent princess doubled down. Hygiene was godliness here. Neglecting to brush one's teeth was a capital offense in her eyes. The unanimous agreement made Gustavo's skin crawl. But he was trapped. Like it or not, these maniacs were his roommates for the next 30 days. He swallowed his pride to survive this hell camp. The scene shifted to the mess hall as the recruits fueled up. A notification rang out. Teams would be numbered 1 through 10. The first mission? Select a representative leader immediately after eating. Anxiety tightened Gustavo's chest. The blonde wasted no time, nominating the silent princess as the only qualified candidate. The Bland twins nodded in sync, and even the mob characters started to sway. The momentum was building against him. Gustavo refused to stay silent. He cut in. The silent princess has the personality of a statue. She is not leader material. A leader needs charisma, not just rules, he argued. The blonde scoffed, shutting him down instantly. Only blood purity matters, she sneered. A hybrid's opinion is trash. Her arrogance ignited a wildfire of rage in Gustavo's gut. He wanted to grind her face into the concrete. He expected combat training next, but instead, they were tossed some cheap equipment, garbage boots and useless scrap. But the torture wasn't over. Before rest, they were forced into a theory seminar. Eyes glued to a screen, they watched the briefing. The instructor spoke as if the company's fame was universal knowledge. Gustavo was clueless, so he nudged Jan for intel. It is Hawaii Communications, Jan whispered, a strange name for a Korean outfit. But questions were dangerous. The goal was simple: survival of the fittest. This was a government-funded operation designed to forge weapons. They weren't civil servants pushing paper. They were dogs of the state, bred for combat. The instructor bragged about walking on blades in the good old days. Gustavo rolled his eyes, sick of the boomer rhetoric. The advice for avoiding insanity? Absolute obedience. Do what you are told, or break. That is enough for the grunts, the instructor muttered off-screen. The feed glitched, and a smiling, pleasant woman appeared. Her message was clear: master your immortality or be consumed by it. This lesson had to be etched into their souls. Briefing over. After scrubbing off the day's filth, Gustavo desperately craved the sweet embrace of his mattress. Peace at last? Hardly. His sensitive roommates began whining that the sound of breathing was deafening. Johan snapped, telling Gustavo to stop breathing altogether. Go outside and die quietly, he hissed. Gustavo recalled the elder's wisdom. For immortals, mastering sleep took 3 long years of discipline. The oldest recruit here was only 23. They were all suffering. Curious, Gustavo asked his friend how he managed to drift off. I have a trump card, the boy smirked. He forcibly shut his body down. Being immortal meant no risk of permanent death, after all. Gustavo offered a helping hand. The boy looked skeptical, warning him to go easy on the force. Last time I was out for 2 days, he started to say, but the warning came too late. Gustavo was already venting his stress, choking his roommate into oblivion. The redhead watched in pure terror, utterly speechless. Terror turned to intrigue. Suddenly, everyone wanted a dose of the human sleeping pill. The redhead stepped up, desperate for rest. The craze spread like wildfire. Who is next? Gustavo asked. Hands shot up all across the barracks. Gustavo had a field day. He dispensed unconsciousness like candy, sending nearly everyone to dreamland. But 2 holdouts remained. They needed a ticket to meet Morpheus, the Greek god of dreams, and Gustavo was the travel agent. The blonde finally saw Gustavo's value. But it was time for petty revenge. He flatly refused to help her. We are roommates, she pleaded, claiming she would owe him a favor. Desperation didn't suit her. Gustavo didn't give a damn about her promises. He turned to leave, but then, a devilish idea struck him. He decided to help after all. With a blur of motion, he delivered a devastating chop to her neck. Lights out. Because the strike was consensual, it purified our protagonist's very soul. Now, only the silent princess remained defiant. Gustavo called out for the next challenger, but the silent princess simply lay back down, completely ignoring him. If that was her choice, so be it. After all, our protagonist needed his rest too. That night, the entire dorm slept like the dead, except for one very proud, very awake individual. Gustavo realized that bedtime was quickly becoming the highlight of his existence. But the peace was short-lived. The bald instructor was back on duty. Chaos returned as the recruits were forced to run until their lungs burned. In the gentle instructor's class, she tried to teach these immortal boys caution. However, the protagonist's sparring partner was busy bragging about his past street fights. He truly believed he could crush our boy. With a roar, he charged forward, intending to slam Gustavo into the cold, hard ground. But Gustavo didn't even blink. He slammed a fist into the poor guy's face with generous force, knocking him out cold, much to the instructor's amusement. Finally, the time had come for the ultimate test. Running on steel blades. It was traditional conditioning for immortals. The candlehead instructor barked the order, and terror filled the recruit's eyes. Even the protagonist looked worried. But not out of fear, he was concerned because these blades were only 2 centimeters long. He was used to running on spikes triple that size. A week flew by, and night fell once more. Gustavo wondered if the silent princess was still going to play hard to get. Honestly, he enjoyed the rejection because he knew she was the one suffering from insomnia. But as he entered the dorm, the atmosphere was heavy. Everyone was waiting. Gustavo turned to Yoan for answers. His friend grimly explained that something went down the previous night. The team leader couldn't sleep. In his frustration, he stormed out and got into a brawl with other insomniacs desperate for rest. That explained the hostility. Dozens of eyes bore into them. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed down the hall, heading straight for their room. The silent princess snapped that it was his problem, refusing to let anyone else intervene. Outside, a group of angry recruits materialized. They exchanged menacing glances before the leader of the thugs stepped forward, hunting for one target. He was looking for our protagonist. Gustavo stepped up without hesitation, wondering what business this citizen had with him. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Gustavo stared him down and asked what the background character wanted. At first, the thug stammered, unable to find the words. Blushing with embarrassment, the extra finally admitted he wanted to have a beautiful night's sleep with him. That caught our boy completely off guard. Without a second thought, Gustavo shouted that he strictly likes women. The background character panicked, backtracking instantly. He clarified that he just wanted to sleep peacefully, not times him in that way. He felt like he was dying of exhaustion. His entire squad was plagued by insomnia, and they were desperate for Gustavo's healing touch. Gustavo asked how they knew about his ability. The recruits sighed, rumors spread fast, and Jan was a massive gossip. It turned out Jan was the one behind the prank, telling the extra to phrase his request in the most misleading way possible. That explained everything. When asked if the treatment was difficult, Gustavo shrugged. It wouldn't take long at all. That night, he sent everyone on Team 1 into a coma-like slumber. The next morning, the tattooed leader was overly friendly toward our protagonist. He loudly praised Gustavo's skill with his hands, claiming they helped him sleep better than he had in years. Gustavo immediately warned him to watch his mouth. Phrasing it like that was going to give people the absolute wrong idea. Training resumed, and the recruits suffered under the bald instructor's tyranny. But then, the instructor spotted an anomaly, an overweight immortal. In the old days, such a physique would be unacceptable. Our protagonist watched as the chubby recruit struggled to keep pace. The poor soul stopped mid-run, vomiting from the exertion. Gustavo slowed down and asked if he was all right. The chubby guy gasped, telling our boy to leave him behind. He had given up, convinced he couldn't cross the finish line. Gustavo wouldn't hear it. He hauled the guy off the ground, telling him that if he was going to quit, he shouldn't have started in the first place. He promised to help him. They were going to cross that line together. Now, it was time to run. Gustavo motivated the heavyset recruit, refusing to let him stop. The bald instructor saw this and sneered, taunting them by asking if they were a couple. When they finally dragged themselves across the line, the instructor checked his watch. Time was up. He announced a deduction of 5 points for both of them. The chubby recruit panicked, knowing the weight of that punishment. But our protagonist brushed it off. The points didn't matter to him. Still, the other boy was anxious, asking why Gustavo would sacrifice his score for a stranger. Gustavo thought it was a stupid question. He didn't need a logical reason to do the right thing. Camaraderie was the foundation of survival. Without it, he was just a moving corpse. He remembered being saved when he was little. That savior hadn't needed a reason either. Later in the locker room, Johan asked if our boy would help the silent princess, since he was clearly sleep-deprived. Gustavo scoffed, replying that the jerk always refused his help anyway. Johan laughed, noting that the two of them were truly exceptional stubbornness. But suddenly, our protagonist noticed something strange about the redhead boy. He leaned in close to Johan, whispering urgently. He needed the details. Apparently, the drama had started hours ago, back at the convenience store. A blonde beauty had dropped her wallet. A chance encounter that revealed her name, Miho Wu. The redhead had rushed to return it, laughing that he finally learned her name after all this time. But his chivalry hit a wall. She shot him down cold, zero interest, ice cold. That explained why the redhead looked like his soul had left his body. Gustavo tried to talk some sense into him, but it was useless. The guy was lovesick. Honestly, the sheer dedication was almost impressive. On the trek back to the dorms, the topic remained the same. Gustavo probed deeper, asking what else his friend knew about this mystery girl. But as the barracks came into view, something stopped them in their tracks. A strange sight awaited. The hallway was packed with recruits. They were hunting for one man, the legend, the bus farter, the only one who could grant them peaceful sleep. They were desperate, begging for rest. Gustavo and the redhead exchanged a look. They knew exactly who leaked the secret. Johan, the loudmouth. Cornered, he stammered excuses, claiming he was only singing praises of the protagonist's divine skills. Staring at the sea of exhausted faces, Gustavo felt a headache coming on. How in the world was he supposed to knock out an entire platoon? This would take at least an hour. His peaceful nights were officially over. And next on the list, he had to put a girl to sleep too. Smooth as ever, Gustavo gave his signature command. Dream of me. The girl scoffed, asking if the cheese was really necessary. Fine. Dream of a handsome guy then. With that, consciousness faded. Job done. Finally, he could retreat to his sanctuary, but his room wasn't empty of interest. There she was, the silent princess, the one who actually caught his eye. Days blurred into a cycle of exhaustion. He honed his technique relentlessly. Gustavo had performed the move so many times, he had ascended to mastery. He flipped the script. No more house calls. The recruits came to him. Even the instructors turned a blind eye to the operation. The barracks slept soundly, all thanks to him. He was no longer just a recruit. He was a legend. The human sleeping pill, the neck cutter, the Sandman. But fame had a price. A new name circulated, Neck Boy. That one really pissed him off. Despite the stupid name, the respect was palpable. Everywhere he walked, recruits bowed with genuine gratitude. Even the delinquent redhead, that hairy guy from day one, paid tribute with candy. Thankfully, this grueling training phase was finally drawing to a close. Now, the real lesson began. The monsters plaguing Earth had a name. Invaders. 20 years had passed since the first breach. The bald instructor broke it down cold. These beasts were classified by numbers. It started at 1. The logic was simple. The higher the number, the more recent the species' arrival. Tablets lit up with images of the common threats. Beasts capable of slaughtering immortals. But the true nightmares, the ones you run from, they didn't just have numbers. They had names. The instructor projected an image. The Blue Knight. Upon its debut, it massacred 500 armed soldiers without breaking a sweat. As the lecture droned on, our boy connected the dots. This wasn't just a job. This company existed for one reason. War against the invaders. The world felt safe. But the terror of the portals lurked beneath the surface. Humanity needed a shield. That shield was Javi Communications. No wonder the pay was astronomical. Understanding the stakes didn't scare him. It lit a fire in his belly. He was beyond a simple marine now. He was elite. But one question remained. Why was his father so desperate for him to walk this bloody path? Given the lethality of the job, the training shifted. It was time for advanced theory. Artifacts. The nice instructor revealed a lifeline device, a blood carrier designed to keep them conscious when they were bleeding out. Next up, a sensory enhancer. a gadget to sharpen instincts and push physical limits beyond human norms. Now, this caught Gustavo's attention. Power was always interesting, but there was a catch: addiction, permanent damage. Looking at the array of chemical enhancements, Gustavo realized the dark truth. The ranks of the Immortals must be teeming with junkies. Next session. Instructor Candlehead took the stage for orientation. Gustavo's influence began to spread like a virus. He wasn't just helping, he was training others to handle the weaklings. Results were showing. Recruits were finally sleeping without his assistance. The routine stabilized. Even the chubby recruit could finally handle himself. The day of reckoning arrived. Training was over. Against all odds, not a single soul had been expelled. The bald instructor flashed a rare smile. Congratulations were in order. They were no longer trainees. They were official employees of Javi Communications. Cheers erupted. They had survived hell and made it to the promised land. But the tension returned. Instructor Candle stepped up to announce the placements. The top 3 recruits weren't just getting glory, they were getting a fat bonus. Did someone say money? Our boy's eyes lit up. He was ready to claim his prize. 3rd place was called. Gustavo held his breath. And the winner was some random nobody? Even our protagonist had no clue who this background character was. The instructor noted that this recruit's placement required caution. The guy wanted security, but the brass was hesitant. Decisions. The moment of truth arrived for the runner-up spot. The title belonged to the Silent Princess. A ripple of acceptance went through the crowd. This outcome was inevitable. Greatness was written in her very DNA. Gustavo watched closely, still puzzled by the weight of her name. He recalled a conversation where Jan was shocked by our boy's lack of common knowledge. The Silent Princess hailed from a prestigious, ancient lineage. At the time, Gustavo simply assumed she was some rich noble. The redhead had explained the hierarchy of bloodlines. The pure ones didn't just have status, they possessed superior physical qualities and latent potential. And she? She comes from one of the purest, most terrifying bloodlines in the entire sanctuary. Regardless of her heritage, Gustavo respected that citizen's determination. She might be arrogant, but her competence is undeniable. But look at the chaos unfolding now. With the Silent Princess in 2nd place, the redhead's ego skyrocketed. He actually thinks he took the gold. Gustavo and Johann exchanged glances of pure pity. Their friend was hallucinating. The real champion was about to be named. Gustavo didn't need a crystal ball to see how this would end. The result was written on the wall, defying the redhead's delusions. 1st place went to the blonde girl. Gustavo despises that chick. She radiates zero warmth and refuses to be nice. However, he has to admit she is wicked smart. She developed a ruthless strategy to maximize her own points. She wouldn't lift a finger to save a teammate unless it benefited her directly. That selfishness is exactly why Gustavo can't stand her. Staring at the top 3, Gustavo pondered the threads of fate. Would he clash with these monsters in the future? Then reality hit. He has no clue who that 3rd background character even is. Never mind. The recruits have free time until 2 p.m. tomorrow. With freedom on the horizon, Gustavo shouted the magic words. Let's throw a party. But before the celebration could start, an instructor pulled our boy aside for a private chat. The other cadets whispered in jealousy. Another instructor slipped him a personal phone number. The tension rose. His friends were dying to know why the faculty was obsessed with him. To Gustavo, it was obvious. These headhunters want to poach him for their specific departments. This wasn't just training. It was a showcase of talent. The delinquent redhead finally swallowed his pride and thanked Gustavo. Thanks to our boy, he actually slept peacefully. Even a cute girl slid Gustavo her number, suggesting a hangout. Suddenly, the nameless background characters looked at our protagonist with reverence. He was the man of the hour. This level of fame was unexpected. Seeing the results, our boy realized the hellish training had been a massive victory. Back at the dorms, Johann grilled him on his tardiness. Gustavo joked that he's a celebrity now and had to sign autographs. But while the recruits were unwinding, a voice commanded their attention. The atmosphere instantly shifted. A man in a sharp suit entered. Gustavo noted the terrifying skill involved. No one had sensed his approach until he spoke. It was high-level stealth. The suit was merely clearing the path for a titan to enter the room. Someone had heard this year's batch was full of monsters. The old man's real name is a tragedy, so I'm calling him Mufasa. He is the CEO of this entire operation. Sensing his overwhelming aura, the recruit snapped a perfect salute. Our protagonist quickly scanned his mental database on Mufasa. Veteran soldier. A living immortal from the 1st generation. One of the 10 strongest beings in existence. He asked if the recruits enjoyed the training. When they nodded, he cut through the nonsense. He called them liars. Nobody enjoys hell. Shredding your own body to force regeneration is madness, but that agony will save their lives. Mufasa speaks from bloody experience. He summoned the Silent Princess, who stood at attention. He praised her excellence. Then he called upon the blonde prodigy. He declared high expectations for her future. But our boy was confused. What is a CEO doing in a lowly dorm? Maybe the boss has too much free time. Suddenly, he called out for our protagonist. Gustavo froze. Mufasa knows he is a hybrid. Yet, instead of judgment, he offered praise. Not bad at all, he said. Then came the interrogation. How old is he? Does he have a girlfriend? It was as if he were interviewing a son-in-law. With a cryptic promise to see him at work, Mufasa left a parting gift. Yan was stunned by the special treatment. He asked if they were secret relatives. Our boy shook his head. He had never met the old legend before today. They joked that Mufasa might swing that way, but rumors say he has a daughter. The instructor pointed to the box. You're lucky. Use this wisely. It looked like high-end liquor. The redhead tried to use it as liquid courage to approach the blonde girl, but got shot down instantly. Gustavo and Johan had to admire that citizen's resilience. He gets brutally rejected and bounces back in seconds. The chubby kid inspected the box, his stomach leading the investigation. He realized it wasn't alcohol at all. It was a cocktail of divine substances, a treasure mortals kill for to aid sleep and recovery. The box held 10 bottles, one for every survivor. The single dose was valued at 3 million Korean won. Suddenly, the clang of a can hitting the floor shattered the atmosphere, drawing every eye in the room. The can was already bone dry. The silent princess hadn't just tasted it. She had drained the entire contents in one go. Her first move was to lock eyes with our protagonist and unleash a stream of curses. Gustavo stood there, his face burning with sudden embarrassment. Within seconds, the silent princess collapsed into the deepest slumber proof that the little K potion possesses terrifying power. Our boy and his crew returned to their casual banter. Then, the blonde beauty made her move, stepping into his personal space. She offered a sincere gratitude for his protection during the chaos. Gustavo kept his cool, barely flinching at her approach. But the real shock came next. She slid a secret note into his palm, a message for his eyes only, leaving the redhead seething with green-eyed envy. Feeling like the lead in a primetime soap opera, Gustavo soaked in the victory. He had already declared the redhead had 0% chance of winning her over. It seems the redhead lacks a mirror at home. Jan scoffed, claiming their colleagues were hideous, but the note held a much darker purpose, a warning. Rumor has it the CEO hunts for talent personally. This path could lead to meteoric success or a living hell. She implored the boy to tread carefully. Gustavo's interest piqued instantly. He needed to know exactly how the blonde girl possessed such dangerous intel. She clearly held cards she wasn't showing. Gustavo lied to his friend, claiming the message was trash, all while guarding its secrets. The potion finally took its toll, knocking the entire group unconscious. When reality returned, the dawn of their first workday had arrived. Gustavo marched toward external security, team number 3. A lone figure was already there, waiting in the shadows. Our protagonist assumed this was the team chief. But the moment the man laid eyes on him, the air grew heavy with tangible disappointment. An extra, with dead, exhausted eyes, grabbed the phone. He demanded to know if this was a sick joke they had sent him a fresh rookie. He had specifically requested a veteran, a warrior with years of blood and sweat in the profession. Another presence commanded our boy to sit a woman with hair like crimson fire. She asked the chief for orders, but silence was the only answer in the room. Taking charge, she decided she would break Gustavo in herself. The tension in the room made our boy wish he could disappear. She summoned him forward, preparing to unveil the poor guy's impossible duties. She shoved a roster containing every employee in the company into his hands. His mission: memorize every name by the next day, then burn the evidence to ash. She pointed to his station. One line was for standard chatter. The other was the lifeline for high-priority security breaches. After a barrage of strict protocols, Gustavo signaled that he grasped the gravity of the situation. Introduction complete. The red-haired woman turned her back, diving straight into her investigation. Our boy began his corporate grind, which felt painfully mundane. By the time the shift ended, he needed bottles of hard liquor to wash away the day. Surrounded by his crew, he finally voiced the burning question. He needed to know exactly who these terrifying supervisors were. To his surprise, the others had chill bosses, but Jan, the ultimate gossip king, was already spilling the dark tea. Mufasa himself had interfered with the assignment. External security team number 3 was elite, directly linked to headquarters and handling specialized dispatches. It was a role for the elite, a hellishly difficult job where only the most highly capable monsters survived. The team carried a cursed reputation. It was known as the graveyard where first-year careers went to die. The team leader bore the nickname the Blender because he chews rookies up and spits them out. Other departments envied their power. And the red-haired woman? She was a living weapon, a superhuman forged through illicit drug experiments. Desperate to unlock godlike potential, humanity had synthesized drugs capable of granting supernatural abilities. It was the fruit of long-term government projects, shrouded in mystery. No one knew the cost or the body count required to create her. They call her the Knife, because she slices through incompetent rookies without a shred of mercy. But terrifyingly, that mysterious woman was right there, her ears catching every word of the conversation. She heard the protagonist compare them to the Avengers. In that split second, Gustavo's friends realized they were dancing on the edge of a cliff. A cold chill shot down our boy's spine. She had ordered him to memorize names, not dig into their dark, personal histories. After delivering a silent, bone-chilling reprimand, she simply walked away. The waiter pitied our protagonist so much he dropped a portion of food on the table, on the house. Staring at the peanuts, Gustavo accepted his fate. He was absolutely screwed. Desperate to escape the stress, he retreated into a fantasy of a perfect world. But reality struck back as the office phone screamed for attention one more time. Our protagonist announced himself, but fumbled the caller's name. The red-haired woman corrected him instantly, her voice sharp as a whip. Now, both the exhausted veteran and the team boss were convinced. The new rookie was a complete idiot. He was glorified secretary fodder. Yet, in the shadows, he studied the other divisions, earning himself the infamous nickname Little Neck. First up is the squad leader, Lee. He is a pure blood with an impeccable pedigree, and surprisingly, he holds no prejudice against hybrids. However, his personality leaves much to be desired. He is abrasive and sharp, but his combat skills are legendary, easily ranking among the elite within the entire company. When it comes to hand-to-hand slaughter, he has no equal. He also has a mouth like a sailor. Next is the man sporting heavy dark circles, known only as Panda. Like our hero, he is a hybrid. While he couldn't fire a gun or throw a punch to save his life, his mind is a weapon of mass destruction. Understanding his physical limits, he mastered the art of strategy. Gustavo has no idea where that massive brain is hidden, but he does know one thing. Panda has a strange obsession with cartoons. Finally, there is Citizen Kim. As one of the few humans in this monster's den, she survived hellish elite training to stand here. She is the apex predator of humanity, standing tall as one of the most formidable figures in the entire organization. Her heart is a block of ice, devoid of emotion. She exists only to execute the highest level of external security with surgical precision. Gustavo realizes these people are monsters in human skin, incredible power, but garbage personalities. It has already been one hellish week since he joined their ranks. The protagonist's squad heads to the observation deck. It seems business is about to pick up. Our boy steps forward, introducing himself to the rival division. The higher-ups noticed personnel were missing and tracked them to this field exercise. A storm is brewing. A brutal test session is underway, and the current guinea pig is the Silent Princess. She stands before a gravity chamber engineered with alien portal technology. The antagonist claims to know the specs, but the extra explains it anyway for Gustavo's benefit. Inside that chamber, they can simulate gravity 9 times heavier than Earth. Rookies are forced to run, do push-ups, and suffer under the crushing weight. It is a mandatory rite of passage for everyone, though Bad Eyes seems to have conveniently skipped his turn. The spectacle-wearing instructor claims their rookie can handle 5 times gravity, but as the dial turns up, the poor soul inside begins to crumble. Gustavo fights to suppress a laugh at the pathetic display. The redhead catches him instantly, her eyes narrowing as she asks if he finds suffering amusing. The pressure becomes catastrophic, and the test subject collapses unconscious. The machine powers down before it crushes him completely. Bag Eyes suggests our hero keeps that smirk on his face. Meanwhile, the suit-clad man remarks that Gustavo should have been recruited by their elite team instead. The room clears, leaving only the team. It is finally time to test their little monster. The air grows heavy, as they question if their methods are too ruthless. The suit declares that field work is a death sentence. Kim coldly adds that she prefers a loyal hound over dead weight, dragging the team down. To the observers, the rookie is clueless about their harsh treatment. There is a risk he will grow up resenting them. But to survive in this squad, he cannot just be good. He must be superior to every other living thing. Breaking him now is a mercy. If he fails later, he could develop the Immortal's madness, losing all physical sensation and becoming an uncontrollable, sadistic beast. If he fails this trial, Lee will exile him to a safe, boring division suitable for fragile hybrids. Lee still cannot fathom why Mufasa assigned this kid to a kill squad. Suddenly, the test administrator's eyes go wide. The kid is actually good. They hit gravity level 4. While the others are shocked by his resistance, for Lee, this is merely average performance. They need a prodigy with limitless potential. Lee watches closely, realizing the protagonist has not slowed down for a single second. The operator confirms the impossible. Gustavo is moving as if he is on a morning jog. The dial cranks up, hitting an 8 times multiplier. The entire team stands in stunned silence. The operator's voice trembles as he asks if they should proceed. Gravity is already crushing down at 10 times force. Lee is forced to swallow his doubts. He is staring directly at a true anomaly. Inside the crushing chamber, Gustavo keeps moving. Flashbacks of their mockery fuel his fire, being looked down upon, scolded like a child. It is time to prove he is not some background character. He might not understand the mission, but he understands power. As the gravity intensifies, attempting to flatten him into the floor, Gustavo wonders just how high the dial has gone. This pressure should have pulverized an ordinary immortal. It is exactly why the silent princess blacked out. His friends would have been unconscious in seconds. He doesn't know his limit, but mere survival isn't enough anymore. He abandons the plan to just be slightly better. He is going to unleash everything he has. To check his consciousness, they bark a question. What is 8 times 9? Unlike the previous failure, our boy answers instantly and correctly. The file says he is a genius, so Lee demands a harder challenge. He screams out, "What is 12 times 22? Without missing a beat, the answer flies back. Kim stares, convinced the boy has entered a battle trance. Bad Eyes mutters about expensive mental enhancement drugs. Lee vows to strip search the kid later to check for doping. The real problem isn't if he used drugs. It is what they will do if the test comes back negative, and this power is real. The experiment finally terminates. Gustavo steps out, surprisingly exhilarated. His body feels weightless. Even after minutes in hell, he feels stronger. As a hybrid born of 2 supernatural bloodlines, adapting to this pressure is child's play. The boy returns to the observation deck. For the first time, Kim offers a genuine congratulation, her icy demeanor finally beginning to thaw. The shift was instantaneous, leaving Gustavo stunned. Lee barked at him, demanding to know what he was staring at. If he had time to be idle, he had time to get back to work immediately, but the team leader had noticed something. Knowing our protagonist was an anomaly, Lee demanded to inspect the rookie's full records right away. A cold sweat ran down Gustavo's back. He didn't want trouble. He just wanted to be slightly better than the silent princess. As they turned to leave, the machine operator called out to our boy. He was the master of this steel beast, and he had something to say. "You're welcome to swing by when you're off the clock, kid." But Lee cut in, his irritation visible. He ignored the pleasantries, he only wanted to see the rookie data. Gustavo beamed. A compliment from the operator gave him a massive surge of confidence. Even Lee was taking him seriously enough to check everyone's stats. This was his chance to prove his worth, but the mood shattered instantly. Kim's voice was ice cold. She hadn't liked our boy's tone when he introduced himself. She reminded him strictly, "This isn't a vacation trip. He is here to work." The illusion of safety vanished. Gustavo realized the brutal truth. Absolutely nothing had changed. Kim ordered him to keep up the pace, but our boy took the harshness as fuel. He was determined to earn the respect of his new colleagues. Bag Eyes checked his watch and chimed in. "Hurry up. It's time to grind." Thud, thud, thud. Massive encyclopedias were slammed down in front of our boy. Memorize it all. Once again, the weight of reality crashed down on Gustavo. Bag Eyes listed the nightmare. Detailed data on invaders, complex potion cocktail recipes, and intricate diagrams of every machine in the facility. It was mandatory for a rookie to master it all. Gustavo calculated he would need months. "You have 4 days," they said. Visibly horrified, Gustavo stammered. He had to ask what the point of memorizing such an overwhelming amount of information was. That was when Lee stepped into the room. He saw the hesitation. "You need this information," he growled, "unless you want to end up digested in an invader's stomach." Knowing which potion to use in the heat of battle wasn't just homework. It was the difference between life and death. If he didn't understand the machinery, he would be useless in the field. It was fundamental. Even so, 4 days felt impossible. "Impossible?" the woman scoffed. "I did it in 3. Panda raised a finger. 1 day for me, the boss, 2. The standard was set. In 4 days, the exam begins. The penalty for failure was simple. For every single answer he gets wrong, he spends 1 hour in the training center. Lee leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Do you want to quit?" Silence filled the room. Then, steel determination. "I'll do it," our protagonist declared. The team began to form expectations. Meanwhile, back at the facility, the gravity machine operator stared at his screens. He had found something incredible. He had to emphasize it to Lee. He repeated it 12 times. "That kid is absolute #1 material." Lee couldn't deny it. He had to acknowledge that the rookie possessed a truly monstrous physique. Even the veteran operator was intrigued. That hybrid might be a unique breed. Even immortals don't usually possess bodies that durable. The operator mused. "If you toss the kid out, we'll take him." But the rude jerk turned down the offer. Now the operator realized the truth. Lee intended to train this monster personally. The training sounded like a blender turned to max power. The probationary period was a crucible to see if new hires were fit for duty. It was designed to force them to adapt to new responsibilities. Our boy still had a mountain to climb. "Question 1, Kim announced. "What material is used for our ballistic gear?" Gustavo didn't hesitate. "A special fiber blend of leather and Kevlar." "Too short," Lee snapped. Our boy quickly corrected course. "It is harder than diamond, offers total impact absorption, and provides thermal protection against extreme heat and cold. The team chief narrowed his eyes. Number 64? Gustavo froze. A drop of sweat rolled down his face. His mind went blank. After a moment of panic, he took a wild guess. The night of the wheel? Lee asked if he was certain. It was a gamble, but our boy had to take the risk. Lee exploded. Wrong, you idiot! He called him an incompetent piece of trash. Lee continued the verbal assault, telling him not to be so cocky when spouting garbage. It was just a test, and he had failed. The routine was brutal. 10 questions daily. Our boy averaged 3 wrong answers every day. Now, he had to decide which torture to endure first. He went to work on body strengthening and bumped into the kind female instructor. She noticed the poor guy had been training like a demon lately. I just do my best at everything, he lied, forcing a smile. He couldn't reveal that this grueling workout was actually punishment for failing quizzes. Next was the Pain Resistance Center, accompanied by instructor Candlehead. Gustavo was there to learn, but the instructor was the one impressed. The boy was still alive. In other areas, Gustavo was performing at an elite level. His sensory control was flawless. Fighting holograms was child's play. Hungry for more, he returned to the gravity machine. I feel a bit stiff, Gustavo muttered. The machine operator shook his head, realizing the boy was taking this deadly serious. Back in his room, the atmosphere shifted. A folder lay on his desk. Across the room, Panda watched him with a look of deep satisfaction. It was help. Gustavo wasted no time. He dove back into the books to memorize more data. When he finally dragged his body home, our boy was visibly drained. His mom had dinner ready, but the chair opposite him was empty. Dad was gone again. A work trip, they called it. It had been a month since Gustavo last saw him. Questions burned in his mind, but the wall of secrecy was impenetrable. It was strict company policy. His father was frequently subjected to lie detector tests. The truth remained hidden in the shadows. Instead of quitting, our boy decided to seek counsel from the one person he feared more than his boss. He told his mother about the impossible tasks he faced. The matriarch's voice turned cold. She demanded to know if her son was being exploited like a common mule. Gustavo quickly denied it, claiming the work was just labor-intensive and heavy with responsibility. The matriarch didn't offer sympathy. She stated that such burdens are only placed on the trustworthy. If he found it too hard, he should just quit and be done with it. Poor Gustavo immediately regretted opening his mouth. He had forgotten who he was talking to. She cut to the chase, asking if money was his only motivation. Our boy shook his head. There were other factors at play. This brutal path was the only road to his personal dreams. That was why surrender was not an option. By the next dawn, he was back in the grinder, pushing through the hellish training routine. 2 weeks blurred by in a haze of sweat and study. Gustavo had memorized every protocol and secret the facility held. With nothing left to physically practice, he retreated to the archives to study the company manuals. The organization was a beast with 4 heads. External security handled the dangerous field deployments. They were the first line of defense against nightmares like black hole anomalies. They also responded to terrorist acts, though Team 2 usually crushed those threats. They acted as the ultimate support unit whenever the other squads were overwhelmed. Most teams consisted of pure humans, but Team 2 was special. It housed 1 human woman and 2 powerful hybrids. Sitting in his office, Gustavo wondered if this chaotic rhythm was his new eternal reality. He pondered his next training move while walking down the corridor. Suddenly, a familiar and terrifying voice echoed through the hall. It was Boss Lee and the blonde officer. Lee's sharp eyes immediately locked onto the intern. In fact, he affectionately referred to our protagonist as a little punk. He grilled Gustavo, demanding to know if he had been a delinquent back in his school days. Lee had heard rumors from the other recruits and had his doubts, but Gustavo looked him in the eye and swore he wasn't a troublemaker. Lee pressed for the truth. Our boy smirked and said he did the opposite. He was the one who controlled the delinquents. He kept the chaos in check, so the innocent wouldn't suffer. As the tension mounted, the other extras on the floor stopped to watch the showdown. The 2 men stared deep into each other's souls. Lee realized the rookie wasn't a sheep, he was a wolf who used to run the pack. A wicked idea formed in Lee's mind. He asked if the boy had ever been in a real fight, deciding it was time for a practical lesson. A wave of shock rippled through the office. No one expected a challenge like this, but our dear protagonist was already stressed to the breaking point. He didn't hesitate. He accepted the lovely invitation to hell. Lee flashed a malicious smile, wanting to confirm the boy truly had a death wish. He scanned the room, declaring that since nobody was working, they would all serve as the audience. The blonde officer looked at Gustavo like he was the world's biggest fool. Lee set the time for immediately after lunch, and ominously advised the boy to skip his meal. He then ordered the blonde officer to coach the protagonist. She tried to refuse the waste of time, but Lee reminded her that he controlled her future evaluations. Reluctantly, she agreed to prepare the lamb for slaughter. Our protagonist stood there, stunned by the escalation. He was getting help from the Ice Queen herself. Lee warned him there was no backing out now. Gustavo assured him that retreat was never in his vocabulary. It was 5 minutes to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The blonde officer asked why he accepted, and why he seemed determined to irritate the strongest man in the building. Gustavo simply replied that he was doing his job. He followed orders. She pressed him, asking if he truly wanted to go through with this suicide mission. Gustavo knew the boss was eager to hand out a beating. She thought he was just stressed. But the truth was deeper. Gustavo wanted to use this chance to test his own limits against a monster. That man was known as the apex predator of the company. In the ring, Lee mocked the boy, asking if he planned to warm up. Gustavo claimed he was already burning. From the sidelines, Kim whispered a grim advice. Try not to die. The blonde officer echoed the sentiment, telling him to fight for his life. The match began, and Lee graciously invited the rookie to strike first. Our boy narrowed his eyes, focusing his energy. He launched himself toward his opponent like a missile. Gustavo decided to probe with caution first, but his punches hit nothing but air. Lee dodged with supernatural ease, taunting that he would never be touched. The mockery only sharpened Gustavo's focus. He realized he didn't need a flurry, he just needed one clean hit. He formulated a risky plan, intentionally leaving his side exposed to lure the beast in. Lee moved instantly. The boss took the bait. Gustavo prepared his counterattack, but he was too slow. A massive impact shattered his defense. Bones cracked. Gustavo had been struck. His arm was twisted at a sickening angle. He couldn't even process how the hit landed. The world spun into chaos. He hadn't felt this disoriented in years. The floor vanished beneath him. The last time he felt this helpless was during training sessions with the matriarch. Her hands were like sledgehammers. She used to tell him to pull himself together before the real pain began. Our poor guy was only 15 back then, beaten into the dirt just for talking back to her. This was the first time since those days that someone other than his mother had humbled him so completely. Lee stood over him, asking if the rookie was ready to behave. The party is officially over. Gustavo cannot comprehend why he is the only one bleeding. They had traded blows equally, didn't they? But the reality is harsh. Our fighter's arm was seized and snapped like a twig in an instant. That split second of vulnerability invited disaster. A brutal elbow strike connects cleanly, a blow moving faster than sight. Even if his arm regenerates now, Gustavo doubts he can land a single hit. Lee sneers, asking if he bruised the kid's fragile ego. New blood is so proud these days. Gustavo releases a heavy sigh. This is no ordinary brawl. It is a clash between an immortal and a shifter. He foolishly thought victory would be simple, but arrogance is a cruel teacher. Our boy steels himself for round 2. His mind clears, focus locking onto his target. He presses the attack, and Lee seems almost delighted by the kid's stubborn motivation. It is time for a little violence. As the audience watches with bated breath, our boy unleashes an unstoppable barrage of strikes. Some onlookers realize the rookie has skill, but they also know the truth. Lee is treating this like a playground game. Evading those lethal blows requires zero effort from the veteran. Gustavo realizes this is not just physical, it is a battle of mental fortitude. He must remain calm. Lee taunts him again. Why is a kid like him in this company? Is it just for the cash? Gustavo blocks out the noise to maintain his concentration. Lee scoffs, calling the boy pitiful. Then, in the blink of an eye, he vanishes into thin air right before Gustavo's eyes. Gustavo realizes his opponent is masking his energy signature. He needs to sharpen his senses now, or a catastrophe is about to strike. Pure instinct saves him. Our boy dodges a devastating blow by a millimeter, leaving Lee genuinely impressed. Gustavo scrambles back to gain distance. At that godlike speed, closing the gap is suicide. He cannot fathom how Lee moves faster than sound. As a transformer, raw power should be his birthright. But our boy learns a hard lesson. Every rule has an exception, and he has only mastered the basics. Standing before him is an immortal, with centuries of combat refinement. Lee possesses techniques that transcend simple strength, but our protagonist has his pride too. He resolves to pour his very soul into this fight. Lee, however, persists with his interrogation. Does he want to play hero? Lee grabs Gustavo's arm effortlessly, asking if he joined just to pick up women. If that is his goal, he should go be a celebrity instead. The mockery ignites a fire of irritation within Gustavo. He just wants to silence Lee with his fists. The boy's true goal is to chase his passion and become the man he always dreamed of being. Lee vanishes again, accelerating beyond limits. A sharp pain slices across our boy's face. He needs space, immediately. But he defies expectation. Instead of fleeing, he lunges forward, locking his hands around Lee's body. Now it is Gustavo's turn to ask questions. He demands to know why this complainer is even here. Lee tries to assert dominance, but our boy hugs tighter, and the sickening crack of ribs echoes in the air. This only fuels Lee's irritation, but that is exactly Gustavo's advantage. In raw power, the rookie reigns supreme. He decides to crush this old man right here and now. But before he can finish it, a mysterious force ripples through the room. Attention shifts instantly as Gustavo collapses to the floor like a puppet with cut strings. Lee stands over him, watching intently. One spectator gasps, shocked that the leader had to use a high-level technique on a mere rookie. He admits that if he had taken that hug, he would be ground meat by now. Another observer realizes this year's rookies are monsters full of potential. This brutal beatdown is a Team 3 tradition. They exist to shatter the egos of new recruits. Lee walks away with a broken arm and shattered ribs. He orders the protagonist to the infirmary. The kid will be out cold for hours. The blonde girl steps up, but her kindness is fake. She is only volunteering to score points for her probationary evaluation. Kim, ever the curious one, presses the team leader for his final verdict. Lee knows the truth. Our boy dodged a stealth attack that should have been invisible. His willpower burns brighter than anyone Lee has ever seen. It is truly fascinating. The ability Lee was forced to use is known as sensory confusion. Lost in deep contemplation, Lee ignores Kim's question. The entire room holds its breath, waiting for his judgment. Lee finally speaks. The kid is a huge jerk who tried to strike a superior. He orders everyone back to work while the rookie gets dragged away. Others in the protagonist's shoes would not have touched a single hair on Lee's head. The team leader had to rely on refined arts to survive. Despite being a huge weirdo, Lee now believes the protagonist is actually an incredible talent. Meanwhile, in another room, the protagonist's friends are drowning in exhaustion after hard labor. Jan fights to keep his eyes open. Suddenly, the protagonist enters the room, shocking the red-headed boy awake. Our boy sits in total silence. No one understands his mood, but disappointment radiates from Gustavo like a dark aura. Before coming here, he had confronted Lee to demand answers. Gustavo wanted to know how his senses failed him and how the boss pulled it off. Lee admired the thirst for knowledge, but our guy insisted he was just asking. Lee simply smiled and told him the truth. He really likes winning. Gustavo turns his back on the conversation, storming off in frustration. Lee scoffs at the retreating figure, reminding him that this isn't a classroom. He won't get the answers he craves just by asking nicely. The order is absolute. Solve the riddle of his defeat and submit a full report. He needs to dissect exactly why he was crushed, and he has to do it alone. If he goes looking for handouts, he might as well quit now. If the logic of battle escapes him, he doesn't belong in this world. But time is running out. Gustavo needs to decide his path before it's too late. Meanwhile, a rookie takes the stage to explain the analysis team's dark history. However, our boy hears nothing. His mind is trapped in the loop of his defeat, obsessed with the overwhelming gap in power. The impact didn't make sense. It felt less like a fist and more like a phantom weapon hidden in plain sight. Lee's words haunt him even more than the blow. Gustavo realizes that in this pit, survival is a solo mission. On stage, the speaker drops a bombshell. Project Oracle, a system designed to read the threads of fate itself. That is the origin of their squad. The blonde rookie raises a hand. Psychics? She asks. The answer sends a chill through the room. Yes, they were real, but the future is not stone. It is a raging river, constantly shifting and changing course. The girl argues that predicting chaos only breeds despair. Indeed, Project Oracle failed, and the reason is terrifyingly simple. The flaw lies within the human mind. A person's thoughts are merely illusions they accept as reality. We live in a fog of half-truths. Just because you believe a lie with all your heart doesn't make it real. That is the trap. Suddenly, lightning strikes Gustavo's mind. The pieces align as he recalls the old farmer's wisdom. It's about energy masking. True masters, the immortals, intercept the signal before the brain even processes the threat. A grin spreads across Gustavo's face. It isn't just about hiding his presence or blocking sensations. It's about feeding the enemy a lie. He recalls the sensation of gripping his opponent's arm during the fight. His brain told him he had secured the hold, but reality told a different story. He storms out of the room before the lecture even finishes. Replaying the battle in his mind, he realizes the key to the deception lay in the boss's right hand. He knows how to write his report now. For the illusion to work, Lee had to predict the exact moment of the attack. The team leader was baiting him, waiting to end it all in a single, devastating heartbeat. Gustavo realizes it wasn't magic. It was battle-hardened intuition, sharpened to the level of clairvoyance, a skill only true survivors possess. Gustavo hasn't reached that peak yet, but he has his own weapons. He can fuse his raw instinct with his sensory input. Adrenaline floods his system. He has just unlocked the door to a higher realm of power. He can do this. Without a word, he launches himself at the team leader. Lee doesn't see it coming. Lee kicks off his desk to create distance, but Gustavo is a statue. He hasn't moved a muscle. It's a feint. He suppresses every sense, narrowing his entire world down to his prey. He reads the shift in air pressure and strikes. But the outcome defies logic yet again. A spark of interest lights up Lee's eyes. The shadow moves. Lee unleashes that ghost-like technique once more. Pressure explodes from every direction. A thunderous impact cracks against Gustavo's jaw, sending him reeling backward. Kim and the redhead watch in stunned silence. Lee straightens his tie, demanding an explanation for the sudden assault. Gustavo spits blood. This is my report. Action speaks louder than ink on paper. His jaw might be shattered, but his mind is clear. Putting his life on the line was the only way to verify the truth. A bystander whispers in horror, "The kid's insane. He definitely has a death wish." Lee smirks, wiping dust from his suit. The little punk isn't wrong. The praise catches Gustavo off guard. "Now clean this up," the chief orders. He glances at the others. "You two look a little too comfortable." They are dismissed. Only Lovato remains. His photographic memory is the only thing that can restore the office chaos. Outside, Kim breaks the silence. What the hell was that move the rookie just pulled? It was sensory deception. Kim narrows his eyes. "Did you teach the boy our secret arts without telling us?" "Never," Lee replies. "He figured it out, and instead of writing an essay, he chose to throw a punch." Lee chuckles. He likes that kind of guts. His physical specs are top tier, but his origin remains a mystery. A pure blood would never be so reckless. Yet, the boy followed the order to the letter. Discover the technique, then use it against the master. He unlocked a forbidden skill today. His reward? Janitor duty to clean up the wreckage. But the next morning brings a shock. Lee drops the order. "Get the rookie ready. He's going on a mission." With the squad critically short-staffed, she has no choice but to draft him. Commander Kim calls out to our boy, and he springs to his feet with burning enthusiasm. The elevator hums as it descends to the armory. Surrounded by walls of lethal steel, both agents began suit-up procedures, locking their gear into place. Clad in tactical armor, Gustavo looks the part of an elite operative, or perhaps just a weekend warrior ready for a heavy round of paintball. Warning sirens scream across the designated zone. A pitch-black void tears open reality in the middle of the field. Our protagonist steps onto the battlefield. Intel suggests a single invader. But in this line of work, one is never enough. The air is thick with the threat of reinforcements. To survive here, you must learn the language of the battlefield. But as our boy stares into the swirling abyss of the portal, anxiety grips his heart. The shadows of a tragedy from 9 years ago return to haunt him. Back then, a mysterious hero saved him from certain death. In that moment of salvation, he swore a blood oath. He would hunt these monsters down until the very end. Today marks the beginning of his true life. The first step on the path to fulfilling that destiny. Yet, the dimensional rift is unnervingly small. Gustavo confesses his unease to his superior, but she offers him nothing but cold silence. Ignoring his nerves, she checks her firearm. Our boy follows suit, prepping for the worst. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts. The gate expands, groaning as it tears wider. An irregularity. Kim screams for immediate backup, but Central Command demands visual confirmation before deploying assets. The moment the footage hits the main screen, terror strikes the chief and his panda companion. The order is screamed over the comms. Retreat immediately. This is a suicide mission. Gustavo feels the weight of the danger. The vanguard is about to breach. He turns to Kim, asking if their duty here is truly done. Met with only silence, Gustavo's mind races back to the satellite intel. Just beyond this field lies a civilian city. Thousands of innocent lives are at stake. Central barks at them to evacuate, but Gustavo refuses to abandon his post until reinforcements arrive. Kim confirms backup is 15 minutes out, an eternity in battle. Central demands they hold position only until the first monster breaches, then run. Gustavo is torn. His instinct screams to fight, not flee. But staying means becoming the primary targets for a horde of nightmares. Modern technology may have solved traffic accidents, but the invaders still claim 10,000 souls every single year. Awakened warriors, immortals are too valuable to waste. Yet, looking at his partner, the protagonist realizes she has no intention of running away. Director Lee rages over the comms at their defiance. Suddenly, a beast bursts from the portal, roaring with primal fury, only to be silenced by a deafening impact. Kim didn't hesitate. Her weapon smokes. The first shot fired. Gustavo refuses to let innocents die today. Adrenaline surging, he creates a distraction, jokingly confessing he might be falling for her as he pulls the trigger. The air erupts in gunfire. Lee watches in panic. To protect them from court-martial, he feigns a connection error. Communications are down. He lies. Gustavo unleashes a hail of bullets while his partner reloads. But the portal is relentless. More shadows spill forth from the void. Their coordination is flawless, holding the line with lethal precision. They prepared for 10 targets, but their loadout is light, and the gate's pattern has shifted. Not 10, but hundreds of beasts are pouring through. Panic threatens to set in. Gustavo knows they need a strategy before they are overrun. He keeps firing, glancing at Kim, whose focus remains razor-sharp. They are the only shield between the city and annihilation. But the horde attacks in waves, and their ammunition counters are flashing red. "Do you have a plan?" he shouts. "Yes," she replies coldly. Her strategy is simple. Gustavo takes the heat, and she reaps the souls. The defensive line is collapsing. The last casing hits the floor. And then, the inevitable happens to our protagonist. A beast lunges, jaws wide to tear out his throat, but Kim intercepts. Out of bullets, she switches to the universal language of violence, blunt force trauma. Gustavo watches in awe. But there is no time to admire her. The rest of the pack is closing in. Kim moves like a whirlwind of death. Whether it's training or enhancements, Gustavo knows one thing for certain. She possesses strength far beyond human limits. He provides covering fire until his weapon finally clicks dry. No more bullets. Time to embrace tradition. Gustavo refuses to be mere bait. It is time to unleash his own dormant power. With a savage roar, he crushes the first skull. Seizing a severed arm, he wields the creature's own limb as a bludgeon against its kin. They hold their ground, but these hellhounds are relentless hunters. Kim draws her blades, dancing through the horde and leaving a trail of corpses in her wake. She demands absolute focus. She weaves constantly to avoid being pinned. But Gustavo, mesmerized by the chaos, loses focus for a split second. A set of jaws clamps down on his arm. Pain sharpens his mind. He draws his combat knife and plunges it into the beast, silencing it forever. Lesson learned in blood. He cannot falter. Focus is the difference between life and death. He commits to the plan. He will be the anvil, drawing their rage, while she becomes the hammer. It is their only path to survival. Gustavo pushes his senses to the limit, recalling every scrap of training. The chaos slows down. His perception expands. Kim notices the shift. Our protagonist has successfully drawn the aggro of the entire pack, a perfect, suicidal distraction. Fangs tear into his flesh from all sides as the monsters swarm him. Gustavo is drowning in a sea of claws and teeth. He is in serious trouble. Kim realized her strength alone wasn't enough, but the protagonist refused to let his story end here. He was built to survive the impossible. He forced his mind to ascend above the agony. Gustavo parried only the fatal strikes, conserving every ounce of strength for a counterattack. Channeling the farmer's teachings, his entire body became a living weapon. Letting even one beast pass meant a massacre for the civilians behind them. That resolve turned him into a demon of war. Suddenly, the thunderous roar of heavy artillery tore through the air, obliterating the monster horde in seconds. Reinforcements had arrived, staring in horror. These two, they're absolute lunatics. Kim, gasping for air, could only look at her partner with dread. He didn't ask for help. He didn't ask for a medic. He only wheezed one question. Did any of them get past us? Looking at his mangled body, she shook her head. No. He had held the line. The moment he heard that, Gustavo's consciousness faded, and he collapsed to the earth. The cleanup crew stood frozen. They asked for a status report, but the battlefield spoke for itself. Silence reigned. The supervisor felt a chill run down his spine. Over 200 carcasses littered the ground. It was impossible 2 people had slaughtered an entire army. Even a squad of 10 elite immortals would have struggled here. Yet, a doped-up human and a single hybrid had defied the laws of power. But she knew the truth. The rookie was the monster who made this miracle possible. However, back at headquarters, team leader Lee was radiating pure killing intent. I couldn't hear the comms. That flimsy excuse didn't stand a chance. Gustavo stood his ground, refusing to break eye contact. Bad connection? Lee's aura flared darker. Disobeying a direct retreat order was a death sentence in this line of work. Lee looked ready to snap his own sanity limiter. He wanted to beat them into a pulp right there. But Kim stepped forward, shielding the rookie with her own career. The team leader's eyes narrowed. Do you understand the weight of the position you stand in? I am just an employee, she answered coldly. Lee didn't let up. You ignored an order. Are you trying to hand in your resignation letter right now? Because of this insubordination, a formal disciplinary hearing was inevitable. For the moment, they were dismissed from his sight. As they turned to leave, Lee's voice stopped the rookie cold. Hey, are you proud of what you did today? Gustavo didn't hesitate. No, sir. Don't you dare lie to me, Lee growled. From today on, you will write a letter of apology. Every single day. Our boy blinked. Wait, don't I get a disciplinary hearing too? Lee scoffed. Do you want one? Because trust me, that nightmare is coming eventually. For now, shut up and write the letters. It was a mercy wrapped in an insult. The rumor mill went into overdrive. The story of 2 agents annihilating a legion of invaders became an instant legend within the agency. Jan broke down the harsh reality. Probationary rookies don't get hearings. They just get terminated immediately. That meant Kim was taking the full force of the punishment to protect Gustavo's job. It was a heavy debt to owe. The politics of disobeying orders were messy, but Gustavo remembered the village nearby. If they had retreated, hundreds would be dead. When Lee asked if he was proud, he had to lie. Deep in his soul, he knew he made the only choice a human could make. The only problem? He was getting sick and tired of this bureaucratic nonsense. Leaving the HQ, his partner caught up to him. "You did good back there," Kim said, her voice stripped of its usual coldness. "Really good." That simple validation fueled Gustavo's spirit like high-grade mana. He wasn't wrong. He was just early. Later at home, the interrogation continued. "Do you have a picture?" his mom asked. "Of who?" "That coworker you won't shut up about." Gustavo sighed. "She doesn't have a profile picture, Mom." That's when the matriarch revealed her master plan. She was scouting for a daughter-in-law. Gustavo panicked. "We are just colleagues. Strictly professional. That's how every great romance starts," she teased. But Gustavo's mind was elsewhere, dreading the upcoming trial. The day arrived. The judgment hall was packed with high-ranking officials. The atmosphere was suffocating. They were there to decide the fate of the red-haired warrior. The charge was clear. Insubordination in the face of a direct order. Kim didn't flinch. "I confirm the charges." Lee stood up, his voice booming. The chaos of battle renders standard protocol useless. An elder with glasses slammed his hand down. Silence. But the team leader refused to back down. Suddenly, the doors burst open. The rookie had arrived to crash the party. An official glared at him. "Were you coerced into fighting?" "No." "Do you know what happens to rookies who break the rules?" Gustavo looked them dead in the eye. "It was the best strategic choice available. I regret nothing." The elder was furious. "How dare you decide that?" Lee cut in, smirking. "It's called common sense, old man. Something this council seems to lack. That insubordination saved an entire village from extinction. Is that not our purpose?" The room fell into a stunned silence. Lee pressed the attack. "Saving lives is the mission. Everything else is secondary." "You speak out of turn. Get out!" they shouted. But Lee stood like a mountain, refusing to abandon his subordinates. "Someone just told me to shut up," Lee growled, his aura flaring up dangerously. "I'd love to see you try and make me." Our protagonist realized this company wasn't just a workplace, it was an absolute zoo. Lee stood his ground, arguing that these chaotic incidents were just part of the job. To him, this wasn't even a crisis. The atmosphere grew suffocatingly tense. Sensing the danger in the air, the protagonist knew it was time to escape that room immediately. Lee demanded flexibility from the higher-ups. He warned them that this rigid bureaucracy was terrified the rookies. Stepping out into the hall, the extra beside our protagonist couldn't decide if that hearing was a victory or a total disaster. It was impressive to see the team leader defending his members, but he was walking a razor's edge. One wrong move, and he could torpedo his own evaluation. Gustavo was stunned. He never realized Lee would compromise himself like that, especially since the man was usually such a tyrant. After a tense walk, the two bid each other farewell. But just as the elevator doors began to slide shut, the extra slammed his hand out to hold them open. It was the panda, bursting onto the scene. Burning with curiosity, he demanded to know how the hearing went. Gustavo admitted the team leader was fighting tooth and nail for them. He was putting everything on the line again. The panda pressed for more gossip, but his questions only sent the protagonist deep into thought. His mind drifted to the secret conversation with the other extra, the one who had invited him to defect to the audit team. Now, fate had placed multiple paths before him. He lied to the panda, claiming nothing else happened. Moments later, the battered team returned to the office. Lee was seething with rage. Panda asked for the verdict. Kim dropped the bomb. She was suspended from field missions for 30 days. For a hunter, that punishment was a death sentence. Lee refused to accept it. The decision made absolutely no sense. To Gustavo, it seemed manageable, but the horror on everyone else's faces told him this was a catastrophe. He didn't know how to extract information from a team that had gone completely silent. Defeated, they all returned to their desk work. Our boy drafted his apology letter and handed it over. Lee read it and looked at him like he had lost his mind. Gustavo claimed innocence, saying this was all new to him. But slowly, he was being accepted. Kim began training the boy to become a lethal weapon. They urged him to awaken his immortal senses. He even received secret tips on how to survive a fight against the team leader. Another apology letter was submitted, but the words were getting bolder. Gustavo was trying to catch the team leader off guard. He used every sparring session to study his opponent. He pushed his intuition to the limit to predict the attacks. But the boss was a ghost in battle. No habits, no tells. Gustavo relied on instinct alone, and that was exactly why he got played again. Lee struck through his defenses with terrifying ease. Panda called out the time. 6 minutes, a new survival record. Nursing his aching back, Gustavo realized the team leader was a monster in human skin. Then, the daily routine shattered. Our boy was writing apologies when the team leader summoned him. Lee demanded to know what that blonde scumbag had whispered to him in the elevator. He was talking about the extra who had tried to poach him days ago. The recruiter had played it off as a joke when saying goodbye, but the intent was clear. Shocked, Gustavo asked how he knew. Lee revealed the truth. He knew someone was hunting his rookie. Gustavo trembled at his boss's murderous aura, and as if summoned by fate, the blonde poacher walked into the office right then. Lee launched himself like a missile, delivering a violent, bone-crushing kick to the poor guy. The veterans didn't even blink, but our protagonist couldn't believe his eyes. Sprawled on the floor, the victim gasped, asking why. Lee snarled that it was punishment for touching his rookie. The man stammered, claiming the recruitment offer was just a joke. Before the bloodshed could escalate, a man with glasses entered the fray. Our protagonist recognized this powerful figure immediately. It was the leader of the external audit team. He demanded to know what Lee thought he was doing. The crazy boss shrugged, saying he was just having a little fun. He'd only broken one of the guy's arms, no big deal. The man with glasses wasn't amused. He declared that Lee was the one overreacting to a harmless joke. That's when the realization hit Lee everyone knew about the proposal. He was furious that his rookie was being scouted by another division. But the audit leader simply looked at him and called him a madman. Seizing the moment, the man with glasses asked for the protagonist's opinion, noting that Lee's team was a living hell. Lee snapped back, claiming ownership of the rookie. His voice boomed across the entire floor, making sure every other team heard the warning. He threatened that if anyone dared to poach his kid, they would find out exactly why he was known as the Blender. In that moment, Gustavo realized his boss was genuinely insane. The man with glasses countered, claiming their division valued freedom above all. He turned to our protagonist, forcing him to choose. The answer would validate one of them. The entire office froze, staring at the kid with intense pressure. Gustavo wasn't ready for this spotlight, even if the answer was obvious. His leader is a psychopath. Panda is a weirdo. And the only woman on the team is made of ice. Yet somehow, he stood his ground. The four-eyed recruiter was left speechless. According to Yan, this kid was a total anomaly. The glasses guy pushed harder. He offered a lifeline, promising to rescue our protagonist if the insane team leader was the problem. But our boy is playing 4D chess. He wants times to learn from that lunatic. Seeing this resolve, Lee realizes this kid is going to be a massive headache. Sticking his tongue out like a child, the audit leader sneered. He asked if the protagonist truly thought he could gain wisdom from that absolute jackass. Our boy didn't blink. Yes. He is dead set on staying in the chaos. Rejection accepted. The recruiters cleared out. Silence returned. Lee snapped, asking why Gustavo was staring at him like that. The decision was made. They were ordered back to the grind. Panda whispered a secret. The boss is actually proud of the rookie's guts. Walking past the desk, Lee spotted a paper. What is this trash? Gustavo smirked. It's my apology letter. It wasn't finished yet. But seeing the demonic glint in that lunatic's eyes, Gustavo felt a chill. He might have poked the bear too hard. That letter isn't an apology. It is a masterpiece of sarcasm, a poetic insult disguised as regret. Violence erupted immediately. Mid-beating, Panda sighed to the female member. Great. The crazy person count just hit 2. While the two maniacs traded blows, a mission alert chimed. Lee paused the assault. He wanted the details. The question remained. Who to deploy? The team leader grinned. He only has one sacrificial rookie available. Gustavo loved the sound of that. Where to? Lee pointed the way. Pack your bags, kid. You're going to the airport. His role? Human radar. Gustavo needs to hunt a girl. She is a supernatural shapeshifter, and the file shows her true form. She is likely a mercenary smuggling critical intel. The stakes are high, which is why they called in the specialists. There will be other shapeshifters in the mix. Gustavo knows she can morph her body, but she cannot hide her scent. Lee asked about backup. Panda nodded. The blonde is going. And likely the silent princess. The team chief was furious. Sending a mediocre rookie alongside those two prodigies? It felt like a bad joke. But protocol is strict. 3 immortals are required. The boy has to go. Due to the shortage, it is an all-rookie squad. Our boy is technically security for the other 2, mostly to keep him out of trouble here. Lee's voice dropped low. Do your job. Make sure absolutely nothing happens to the silent princess. Kang from Analysis stepped in. He started the briefing but froze, distracted by the massive bruise on the protagonist's face. Gustavo shrugged it off. Just a little bonding session with my leader. Kang remembered. Right, the poor guy is on Team 3. That explains the violence. He turned back to the mission, the airport sector. They would operate undercover as civilians. The operation kicks off at dawn. They will rendezvous with the command team on site. The other captain assumes these rookies are already battle-ready and briefed. The plan is set. Gustavo and the blonde will lock down the interior, monitoring every shadow. Meanwhile, the silent princess will hunt alone near the ticketing area. Comms were running smooth until 2 figures approached the protagonist. They claimed to be security support. But Gustavo felt a chill. His instincts screamed these were shapeshifters. Sorry for the delay, they lied. Before the chaos erupted, Gustavo shot a question to Kang. He needed to know why the silent princess was left vulnerable and alone. The analyst bristled. He hated being addressed so casually by the rookie. Kang explained the logic. A highly sensitive immortal is needed. That is why the princess is there. The blonde complained about the crowds. Meanwhile, the princess maintained her arrogance, claiming to be the only true power present. Focus. Complete the mission. The briefing ended. The silent princess stood up, cold and detached. The blonde followed her, equally dismissive. Only our protagonist remained in the room. He apologized to Kang for their attitude. They're complicated. Kang shrugged. Results are all that matter here. Great. Gustavo realized his fate. He has to babysit two arrogant jerks. Mission day arrived. Some random extra hit on the blonde, captivated by her beauty. She shut him down cold. I'm married. Our protagonist watched the scene. Who was that loser bothering you? The extra walked away. The blonde waved it off. Just an exaggeration. Gustavo refocused. The crowd looked normal. Too normal. Suddenly, a call came through. Intel update. Target profile confirmed. Blue shirt, jeans, male, around 30. The hunt begins now. Walking calmly through the crowd, the target moved like a phantom, burdened by a massive backpack. He kept his head low, a predator blending perfectly into the flow of humanity. Gustavo scanned the area with hawk-like intensity, but his senses hit a wall. The man gave off zero killing intent, a perfect ghost, undetectable even to the trained eye. The blonde girl noticed our protagonist's confusion. He couldn't fathom why the silent princess was treated like royalty. But she wasn't just coddled. She was a breed apart, a true pure blood. Her sensory perception wasn't just good, it was god tier. She could feel the slightest ripple in the atmosphere, detecting anomalies invisible to the naked eye. The squad moved into kill positions. As the tension mounted, a memory surfaced in Gustavo's mind. His father's words echoed from the past, clear as a bell. To be a true immortal, your senses must be absolute. But there was a catch. Those blessed with such power usually harbored personalities that were utter trash. The old man had been relieved. His son wasn't a sociopath, though it pained him to admit the boy lacked that innate sensory talent. However, our boy was a different kind of monster. A genius of adaptation, he had already proven his worth to team leader Kang. Abandoning hesitation, Gustavo took point, his eyes locked forward as he prepared to confront the target directly. Around them, the situation tightened. Law enforcement swarmed the perimeter, establishing a cordon. The net was closing, and the air grew heavy with anticipation. Civilians looked on in confusion, whispering about movie sets and stunts. Ignoring the noise, Gustavo pushed his perception to the limit, reading every shift in the environment. Is it really just a lone wolf? The question hung in the air, cranking the team's adrenaline to maximum. Something felt wrong. The silence was too loud. Suddenly, chaos erupted. A ripple of panic tore through the crowd. A police officer already had his service weapon leveled, finger trembling on the trigger. Before the officer could engage, the silent princess scrambled to regroup with her squad. But the enemy moved first. Gunshots rang out, tearing toward the innocent crowd. Pandemonium reigned. The officer who opened fire dropped instantly, neutralized by an unseen force. The battlefield had just become a slaughterhouse. Hearing the screams, Gustavo's instincts screamed danger. He sprinted toward the epicenter. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. A murderous intent was locking onto the blonde girl. Death brushed past her. The girl barely dodged a decapitating strike. With lightning reflexes, she countered, slamming the bald assailant into the ground. One threat down. This wasn't a standard hit. These attackers were espers. The air crackled with the unmistakable pressure of psychic energy. Gustavo's radar pinged. 2 more signatures detected, but the total enemy count was unknown. The rats were scattering, spreading the chaos to cover their tracks. I have to end this now. As Gustavo moved to intercept, his mind flashed back to the briefing room 2 days ago. The dossiers were clear. Kang had nothing but praise for the silent princess. A prodigy from a prestigious traditional clan, her lineage was as formidable as the blonde girl's. But Kang's true interest lay with the anomaly Gustavo, the rookie who had gone toe-to-toe with the team chief and lived to tell the tale. A monster in combat, yet possessing a humble heart. He was the perfect weapon they had been searching for. A rare gem in a world of stones. Even the enigmatic Candlehead instructor had remarked on it. The boy's aura. It was uncannily similar to times his asterisk. Back in the present, the sound of gunfire shattered Kang's composure. The rookies were in danger. Protocol be damned, he abandoned his post and charged in. He needed situational awareness, fast. Bursting into the terminal, his gaze snapped to a lone police officer standing amidst the panic. That man. His presence set off every alarm in Kang's body. A split-second decision. Should he pursue or save his team? Kang recalled Gustavo's talent for blunt force diplomacy. He barked an order into the comms, trusting the boy's strength. Hunt him down. Lethal force authorized. Kang tried to coordinate the others, but disaster struck. The silent princess had taken a bullet, yet the protagonist didn't falter. With cold determination, he pressed forward. The mission came first. Feelings came later. The airport transformed into a war zone. An all-out brawl erupted as psychic blasts and shockwaves tore through the terminal. Gritting her teeth, the silent princess forced herself up. Pain was irrelevant. She engaged, dropping a corrupted officer with precise fury. The blonde girl's voice crackled over the radio. 7 hostiles confirmed. But the primary target is the mimic, the shape-shifting woman. I can still fight. The princess ignored the gaping wound in her chest. Kang's voice boomed in her ear. Don't be an idiot. They were assets too precious to squander on a suicide run. He had to be the iron wall that kept these rookies alive. A thug raised his gun, aiming for a kill shot. Asterisk crack. Asterisk Kang descended like a beast, obliterating the attacker instantly before snapping to the next target. It was time to take out the trash. Meanwhile, on the lower level, the cop had already shed his disguise, disappearing into a new skin. But he couldn't shake the hunter. Gustavo cornered the fine citizen, eyes burning. Done running yet? The target sneered, impressed by the relentless pursuit. You just don't quit. What are you, an immortal? Gustavo smirked. Isn't it obvious? The target paused, sensing. Nothing. No aura. No threat. No. You're not, he scoffed. And you came alone? Do you have a death wish? Backup is 10 minutes out, Gustavo stated calmly. The target laughed. Big mistake, kid. You won't last 10 seconds. Suddenly, the air grew heavy. The target's flesh began to ripple and bulge, tearing through his clothes. A pure strength-type Esper, he expanded into a hulking monstrosity of muscle and rage. Since immortals can't die, the beast growled. I'll just crush your skull until you stop twitching. Gustavo checked the time. Backup was delayed. 10 minutes? A cold light flashed in his eyes. That's plenty of time. He wasn't worried. Upstairs, the small fry had already been purged. Medics were swarming the wounded. But Kang realized the horrifying truth. The main operation was a bust. The shapeshifter had vanished into the wind. The blonde bombshell was spot on. She was merely a decoy, a smokescreen to let the true target slip away into the shadows. Meanwhile, downstairs, the protagonist steps into a brutal clash. But looking at his opponent, nobody believes this thug actually stands a chance against him. The thug launches the first strike, aiming a lethal blow straight for the protagonist's head. Gustavo blocks it with insulting ease, but this small fry isn't surprised yet. Not until he tries to retract his arm and realizes, he is trapped. Something is terribly, horribly wrong. Gustavo smirks, asking if the guy skipped lunch because his punch felt pathetic. The strength difference is absolute. With just a fraction of his power, our protagonist snaps the clown's arm like a dry twig. One hand is all it takes. Agony explodes through the thug's body, nearly dropping him to his knees. The massage session hasn't even properly begun. Sensing his impending doom, the bald bandit tries one last desperate counter. He aims a vicious kick at our boy's skull, hoping to turn the tides. But against Gustavo's elite training, redirecting force is child's play. Defending against a techniqueless brawler is effortless. This opening gives Gustavo the chance to get nasty. It is time to rearrange the dental work in this poor thug's mouth. He hurls the wretch into the air like a cheap party balloon. The bandit crashes into the ground, visibly broken and mangled. Gustavo looks down cold, telling him he lacks hatred. The entire skirmish didn't even last 3 minutes. Now, he just has to wait for backup. Curiosity gets the better of him as he eyes that mysterious backpack. It seems shapeshifters can mimic objects, but turning into solid metal is beyond her limits. And our boy has a lighter in hand, ready to set that backpack ablaze. Silence reigns until a mouth suddenly manifests on the fabric, screaming surrender. Gustavo is not amused by the delay. He has questions, and he wants answers now. The backpack begs him to holster the flame. She stammers that she can't guarantee full disclosure, claiming it might ruin her entire career. However, she is willing to cut a deal. Gustavo shuts that down instantly. He has zero interest in negotiations. He coldly asks if she can shrink into something smaller, perhaps a cigarette, just so he can light her up properly. Terror fills her voice as she replies, she is at her limit. Seeing she remains a bag, Gustavo demands to know what she is waiting for to assume human form. The backpack awkwardly admits. She needs to borrow his jacket first. Backup finally storms the floor, confused by the scene. Gustavo has draped his jacket over the woman and stands over the defeated bald bandit. Kang demands a sitrep immediately. So, our boy casually reports the situation. He explains the ambush by the bald thug and the subsequent beatdown he delivered. He reveals the backpack was actually the shape-shifting woman in disguise. Moments later, the silent princess arrives on the scene, but our protagonist informs her she is too late. The show is already over. The bald bandit is slapped in cuffs immediately. Just to provoke the silent princess, our protagonist leans in. He whispers right in her ear, making sure she knows exactly who is responsible for catching the target. The police chief from the other agency asks in disbelief if Gustavo took down the heavy hitter solo. Our boy shrugs, claiming he just got lucky. He kept his cool, that is all. Unlike certain amateurs, the Transformers like our boy's attitude, until someone asks if he realizes exactly who he just knocked out. Facing our protagonist's total ignorance, even the shapeshifter woman looks shocked. That bandit is a multi-state fugitive known as Rhinoceros. There is a massive bounty on his head. Gustavo soon learns that this citizen is tied to extremely dangerous syndicates. What he accomplished here is nothing short of sensational. Onlookers assume the battle was a violent struggle. Since our boy is an immortal, they figure he already regenerated from heavy damage. Only Gustavo knows the truth. It took a single blow. Kong is thrilled with the results and showers our boy with praise. Now, it is time to talk business. None of this chaos was in the original contract. One of their team subdued the threat without using agency gear, which leaves the woman a bit salty. Still, she agrees to the terms, but she has a question of her own. She demands to know the rank of this promising rookie. Gustavo introduces himself as a mere new recruit. Back at the office, Lee scolds him, saying our boy doesn't need to drop his name every time unless he wants unwanted fame. Gustavo admits with a grin that old habits die hard. Returning to the investigation, the intel confirms the bald bandit belongs to a terrifying group. The puppet masters behind everything are known as Prometheus. The shapeshifter girl was smuggling confidential data for them. It was extremely sensitive data. Before leaving the chief's office, Lee asks if our protagonist is satisfied with capturing a terrorist. Our boy says yes. But back at his desk, reality hits. He is ordered to write a report, and this time, he has to do it properly. This organization is a cabal of mad scientists aiming to evolve humanity, mimicking the god who stole fire for mankind. Pondering this, Gustavo realizes the world is absolutely teeming with lunatics. If crazy could fly, the sky would be blacked out. Just then, a bespectacled man approaches the protagonist with a dark request to follow him. The atmosphere was heavy as Gustavo was escorted into a secluded chamber, where a man of imposing stature was already waiting. It was Mufasa. With an aura of absolute authority, he gestured for our boy to take a seat, maintaining a formality that sent chills down the spine. Did you stage that spectacle for the police and the Transformers? Mufasa's voice cut through the air. Gustavo replied simply, it was a miscalculation. Surprisingly, Mufasa let it slide. Humans are flawed creatures. After all, Mufasa knew exactly what went down with the terrorist. He leaned in, eyes gleaming. Tell me, child, what is it that you desire? Without hesitation, Gustavo aimed high. A promotion. Mufasa smirked, genuinely admiring the rookie's sheer audacity. However, reality was harsh. His feat, while spectacular for a rookie, wasn't enough to shatter the hierarchy. It was impressive, yes, but not legendary. Gustavo narrowed his eyes. Then why summon me? Mufasa chuckled. He simply wanted to praise the boy personally. I ask again, the superior said. Name your price. Our protagonist fell into a calculated silence. Finally, he spoke the universal language. Cash. Money is always welcome. He shared the spoils with his mother, whose joy was worth more than gold. But there was no time to rest. Following the airport operation, Gustavo was thrust into a storm of field missions. Now, the truth about his unhinged team chief made perfect sense. In just 3 months, Gustavo had hunted down 5 supernatural bandits, a relentless pace, 10 chaotic portals sealed shut. Yet, he learned a dark secret. Team leader Lee absolutely despised these kinds of missions. Even worse, he loathed the paperwork. And honestly, that was entirely our protagonist's fault. His reports were thorough, including details like how often the team leader picked his nose. Yet, amidst the pettiness, Gustavo trained like a demon. His body was hardening. No longer would he hit the floor after just a few casual strikes from his monstrous leader. In reality, Lee only spared 10 minutes for these brutal sparring sessions. Every second was a lesson in pain, yet Lee's defenses remained impenetrable. 3 months later, the atmosphere shifted. Kim was seething with pure hatred. I'll kill them all, she vowed, her killing intent flooding the company restaurant where the team had gathered. She was deep in a drunken monologue. 1 drop of alcohol, and she would collapse into a cycle of sleep and incoherent rambling. Enjoying the rare peace, Panda turned to the boss. Think I've got a shot at a girlfriend? Lee scoffed. Do I look like a psychic to you? The crazy leader shifted his gaze to our protagonist. Don't you dare get wasted, he warned. He had zero tolerance for a rookie making a scene. This wasn't an ordinary bar. It was a sanctuary exclusively for immortals, quiet, cozy, and safe from prying human eyes. As the alcohol flowed freely among the veterans, a dangerous curiosity began to bubble within Gustavo. "Stop staring," Lee snapped. But Gustavo couldn't help it. He needed to know. How much stronger had he truly become in the last few months? The question dropped like a bomb. "Fight me. For real." The table went silent. His colleagues stared, stunned by his death wish. Lee assumed the liquor was talking, but Gustavo's eyes were stone sober. "I'm fine," he insisted. A savage grin spread across the team leader's face. He loved this. Without a word, Lee marched toward the training hall. Our boy followed, stepping willingly into the lion's den. "You want a concussion that bad?" Lee asked. "No," Gustavo countered coolly, "but our sparring, it's become a bore." It was time for true violence. Panda rushed to the scene, but the thunderous sound of impacts crashing through the door stopped him in his tracks. Inside, two monsters were unleashing a lifetime of learned cruelty upon each other. The pressure was suffocating. Gustavo was being pushed back, but in a flash of brilliance, he snapped his boss's arm. Asterisk, crack, asterisk, yet. It wasn't enough. Lee didn't even flinch. He wound up to crush the rookie's skull. Gustavo blocked the death blow, but shock paralyzed him. The very arm he had just shattered was already moving to strike. The impact rattled Gustavo's brain, a devastating hit that would have killed a lesser man. Silence returned. The duel was over. Panda, wide-eyed, pointed at the leader. "He broke your arm. Can the rookie use times that times power too?" "Different cases," Lee grunted. He looked down at the unconscious boy. Something had changed. This kid, he was built differently. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the upper echelons, a figure reviewed the new recruit files. His eyes locked onto one name, the rumor creator. Intrigued, the high-ranking official commanded his secretary, "Bring me everything on this boy. Now." The report was a paradox. The boy was a tactical genius who got results, yet his spiritual affinity as an immortal? Abysmal. It was as if he had zero talent. To think he survived on the external security team with such pathetic monolevels. It was baffling. "Sir," the secretary interjected, "he scored maximum points in his last field operation." The official scrutinized the data. Combat was high. But everything else? Mediocre. Average. Disappointing. But one detail stood out like a beacon. The medical file read, asterisk, resistance to intoxication, absolute, asterisk, the boy doesn't get drunk. The conclusion was clear. He is an anomaly. A fighting freak with no immortal common sense and zero self-control. A loose cannon. The official tapped the desk. "He doesn't fit. We need to remove him from this equation immediately." Back in the infirmary, Gustavo stared at his own personnel file. "How do they grade these powers?" Panda sighed. "Observation. And don't forget, you're still flagged for that disciplinary hearing. Your score tanked because you broke the rules," Panda clarified. In this world, power meant nothing without obedience. Even with the evidence staring him in the face, Gustavo refused to accept the low score. His workplace attitude was rated as abysmal, a direct consequence of his constant friction with the team leader. For 2 agonizing months, his shouting had echoed through the office, shattering the concentration of every other worker in the company. What baffled Gustavo even more was the strange note in his file. It explicitly highlighted his monstrous capacity for alcohol consumption. The one behind this bizarre assessment? The Mad Chief himself, who seemingly praised our boy solely for his liver's durability. But the ominous red mark next to his name carried a darker meaning. Someone was watching him. Gustavo let out a breath of relief, though he feared it signaled his imminent termination. Panda confirmed his worst nightmares. It was an ultimatum. If the boy failed to produce results in the next evaluation, his head would be the first to roll. A cold sweat broke out over our protagonist. The reality of his precarious position finally sank in. Suddenly, a loudspeaker blared across the facility, ordering all new recruits to the training field. The real evaluation was about to begin. His friends were already there, casting sympathetic glances. Word had spread fast. Our boy was officially the squad's biggest red flag. Gustavo hadn't realized his personnel file was public property. The humiliation burned, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. His comrades tried to cheer him up with grim humor. They joked that if he opened a popcorn stand outside the building after getting fired, they would be his most loyal customers. The time for talk was over. The exam commenced, and the recruits scrambled to take their battle formations. As our boy strode toward his destiny, he smirked. He asked if they had seen times the Sixth Sense asterisk, hinting at a plot twist that would leave everyone's jaws on the floor. Deep within the facility, a surveillance room hummed with activity. Every corner was under watch, and even Mufasa had arrived to witness the spectacle. His eyes gleamed with anticipation. He confessed his curiosity, sensing that the upcoming show would be nothing short of entertaining. It was a clash of titans among the rookies. Our protagonist stepped into the ring for one of the opening bouts, staring down his opponent, the Silent Princess. The tension was palpable. Hate radiated between them, thick enough to cut with a knife. The combat exploded with ferocious intensity. As blows were exchanged, a memory surfaced in our protagonist's mind, a test from the past. He recalled the challenge: identify the subtle differences between cards, a test demanding god-tier perception and focus. He had crushed that task in just over 3 seconds, a record-breaking feat. With that same focus, he prepared to dismantle the Silent Princess. The observers watched the footage of his training in the gravity chamber, their eyes widening in disbelief. 12 times normal gravity. That was triple the limit of a standard recruit. The poor Silent Princess wasn't fighting a man, she was fighting a monster. She couldn't even track his movements. The assault was one-sided and brutal, a complete domination of the arena. His lung capacity was superhuman, his physical strength off the charts, and his reflexes were sharp enough to cut glass. It wasn't just speed, it was instinct. His flexibility and reaction time defied the laws of physics. His combat score skyrocketed past the average for immortals. The Silent Princess was learning the hard way that she was out of her league. Our boy almost felt pity. He had to mentally apologize to her for unleashing the true power he had kept hidden until now. But after meeting the mad leader, Gustavo realized that humility was a weakness here. The mask was off. No more hiding. He made a silent vow to dominate every sector of this organization, starting by absolutely smashing the Silent Princess's face in. With the final evaluation complete, the verdict was in. He was a non-standard, an NS-class anomaly. Afterward, Lee pulled him aside for a lecture. He had shattered the Silent Princess's teeth and taken out the blonde girl too. Flashbacks revealed he had shown no mercy to his friends either, knocking the redhead out cold. Lee asked sarcastically if the boy was moonlighting as a dentist. Gustavo simply replied that he was just a humble level 3 employee doing his job. The petulant response nearly earned him a punch to the face from Lee. Later, as he headed home, a luxury car rolled up beside him. It was the strange man who had been scrutinizing his file. Another complicated Korean name appeared. God, give me a break. I'm done with the names. Let's call him Top Knot Face. The man lowered the window and offered him a ride. Now, the tension shifted to the car's interior. Top Knot Face cut to the chase. He had a covert project launching and a vacant seat with Gustavo's name on it. He urged the protagonist to accept the offer. Gustavo sat in stunned silence, unsure how to respond to such a sudden recruitment. Top Knot Face simply told him to keep up the good work. He just needed to be ready when the project went live. Showing a sudden interest in the boy's welfare, he asked if Gustavo liked high-quality meat. The question seemed random, but the intent was clear. Our boy was dropped off, and Top Knot Face immediately dialed his superior to report contact. He knew the boy was sharp. Gustavo surely understood the weight of the offer that had just been placed on the table. Back at home, his mother eyed the premium beef with suspicion. Gustavo smiled, telling her it was simply the reward for his hard work. The probationary period ended. Our boy was officially promoted to level 3, granting him access to classified documents and a hefty salary bump. While his mother still nagged him about giving her a grandchild, Gustavo moved into a new place, closer to headquarters. But a strange reality settled in. His team had absolutely nothing to do. Lee announced he was heading out for a meeting. He recalled asking Kim why their mad leader never had performance reviews. Her answer was chillingly simple: because we don't do anything. Gustavo vents his frustration. They've been grinding non-stop lately. His teammate sighs, reminding him of their place. We're support, Gustavo. Shadows. That's why the evaluations never come our way. But the truth is far uglier. Through her, he learns the bitter reality. The brass despises their leader. Politics are strangling them, leaving the team to starve for real missions. Panda is the one carrying the weight of the world. He works himself to the bone, trading favors with other squads just to keep their team afloat in this cutthroat ecosystem. Gustavo steps up, offering to shoulder the burden, but Panda waves him off. He's forged in this fire. Our boy, however, he can't sit still. Stagnation is a fate worse than death. We have our moments, Panda admits with a weary smile. Their eccentric leader might be blacklisted, but when he brings in a job, it's always something legendary. The group chat lights up team dinner time. Panda takes point, leading them to a nondescript location. Someone raises a brow. Is this your crib, Panda? Panda smirks. Negative. External conference room. Codename, Panda's house. The lights dim and the projector hums to life. Dinner is served with a side of top-secret intel. Lee commands the room, his eyes sharp. Listen up. The white portal has coughed up a new treasure, a resource known as the ambient stone. This isn't just a rock. It's a battery for aura, the very lifeblood of psychics. It doesn't just store energy, it transmutes it. A literal game changer. The analysis team is losing their minds. This is the future of power. But nature is cruel. Not all stones are created equal. They've established a hierarchy. At the top of the food chain, eclipsing all others, sits the AA rank. The scale is terrifying. A lowly D rank stone fuels a trans-Pacific flight. But a AA? That's enough raw power to obliterate an S rank transformer. And the jackpot has been hit. They haven't just found one. They've located 50 of these cataclysmic gems. The psychic organization locked them down, but secrets never stay buried. The intel leaked. Now, it's a race for control, and the government is screaming for backup. The burden falls on Hawaii Communications. Their mission: ensure the safe transfer of the most dangerous cargo on Earth. The payment? A cut of the stones. That's why they're here. Lee breaks down the operation, and the gravity of the situation settles in. Silence falls over the room. The team is stunned. This isn't support work anymore. This is the big leagues. Lee turns his gaze to the protagonist. The question hangs in the air. Is the rookie ready for the front lines? Panda weighs in. He hesitates, then nods. He trusts the kid's strength. The roster is set, but before the meeting adjourns, our boy raises a hand. Why here? Why this room? He asks. The eccentric boss grins like a maniac. Because we're already on the clock. Adrenaline spikes through the protagonist's veins. No more waiting. The next ambient stone belongs to them. 2 days later, a restricted zone bristling with security, but walls are meant to be broken. An intruder breaches the perimeter, sending the conventional soldiers into a panic. Following the chaotic boss's lead, the protagonist steps into the fray. This isn't a drill, it's a critical strike for the immortal forces. The target bolts. Desperation in their eyes. The protagonist and his partner give chase, moving like shadows. But in the twisted terrain, the prey slips away. The regular soldiers freeze, realizing the horror of what's about to happen. They scream a warning. Don't do it.